Chapter 32:14. You can try and see if I will keep you in my heart. Dmo Xian's gaze was calm and indifferent. Feng Ling was stunned by his gaze for a moment. From Dmo Xian's gaze, she indeed didn't show any fluctuation in her emotions, as though when facing her, she was just a stranger. Feng Ling had an intuition. Even if Dmo Xian killed her, in his heart, there wouldn't be a place for her. If she couldn't leave a mark that belonged to herself in his heart, how could she bear to die? Feng Ling shuddered as she stared at Dmo Xian. Brother D, do you really want to be so heartless? Heartless? Dmo Xian's cold voice was chilly. You and I have never had any feelings before. How could you say that I'm heartless? Feng Ling staggered backwards a few steps. She stared at Dmo Xian's expressionless handsome face. Staring. Suddenly she laughed softly. As she laughed, she rocked back and forth. Her infatuated look made the surrounding imperial palaces, disciples unconsciously moved away, not daring to get close to her. What a good never had feelings. What a good never had feelings. Feng Ling choked with sobs as she laughed so hard that her chest was heaving up and down. I've loved you for more than 10 years, in exchange for a never had feelings, ha ha. Dmo Xian, you're really ruthless, so ruthless. Her vision slowly fell onto Yiqing Luo. Her eyes were filled with dense jealousy and unconcealable murderous intent. On what basis? The heartless brother D only fell in love with this slut. On what basis? She was able to obtain brother D's gentleness and love. Feng Ling's venomous gaze was like a sharp blade, fiercely cutting Yiqing Luo's body. Move your eyes away. Dmo Xian's icy cold voice rang. His long arm scooped and pulled Yiqing Luo into his embrace. Using his body, he blocked Feng Ling's gaze. His attitude of holding a treasure in his hands made Feng Ling's eyes turn even redder. She suddenly laughed out loud. Yiqing Luo, don't you want to know why I'm in the safety zone? Because those ordinary people are very stupid. It's very easy for them to be incited by me. It's very easy for them to listen to me. Wind Chime said sinisterly. I just spent some time to disguise myself, and those idiots really believed in me. They did whatever I told them to do. They're even more obedient than dogs. Do you know why I'm at the Palace of Darkness today? Because Valley Wind City could not be defended anymore. The Southwater continent was already in the hands of the Nether Palace. You can't stop it at all. Windling laughed madly. It was as if he could already see the destruction of the Southwave continent. He saw the success of Abyss Palace. Windling's words made the other disciples of the Palace of Darkness laugh. Feng Ling laughed till she was panting. Suddenly she raised her hand and pointed at Yiqing Luo. Do you think that by infiltrating the base today, you can change the fact that the South Continent is going to be destroyed? No, you're wrong. The Palace of Gloomy Darkness will never lose. Capture these two trespassers alive. If we manage to capture him alive, the Palace Master will definitely reward us. Feng Ling shouted loudly. Following that, the long whip lashed out, taking the initiative to attack Yiqing Luo. Abyss Palace's disciples exchanged glances. Following that, they also flocked over, looking at the Abyss Palace's disciples who were swarming over from all directions, as well as Feng Ling, who was the first to make a move, but finally stopped, disappearing into the crowd. Chapter 32:15. Are you sure? Destroying the base will not change the truth? The young lady's cold voice was like an echo, reverberating in everyone's ears. Then why don't we try and see if we can change it? Following the young lady's last word, it was like a huge bell, pounding heavily on everyone's hearts. The young lady's figure suddenly flashed, turning into a red shadow. Swoosh. A sound of breaking air was heard. Everyone's bodies which were swarming towards Yiqing Luo suddenly seemed to be obstructed by something, as they were not able to advance any further. What's this? What's blocking my leg? No. What's wrapping around my waist? Blood. I'm bleeding. Secluded Palace's disciples cried out anxiously. For a moment everyone panicked. After meeting with this strange thing, they all wanted to retreat. But they turned around. They discovered that the path of retreat behind them was also blocked by an invisible thing. If they wanted to cross over forcefully, their skin would be cut open mysteriously, as blood started to flow out. Something's wrong, look, what's this? Suddenly, a secluded palace's disciple's hand grabbed onto something. His palm started to ooze blood. Droplets of blood seemed to form a thin line in midair. When the blood died even more, everyone then reacted to it. How was this a thin line? It was an extremely fine and indestructible silver thread. This silver thread could cut metal like mud, and was as sharp as a blade. Just a slight touch. It could easily cut through robes, cut through skin, and directly embedded into flesh and blood. Secluded Palace's disciples felt a chill down their spines, as they all stood rooted to the ground, not daring to move at all. The young lady's lips curled slightly, as she gave an enchanting smile. Aren't you going to make a move? Come attack together, don't waste time, I still need to think of a way to blow up your base. You. Secluded Palace's disciples heard Yi Qing Luo's unbridled words, as they were so infuriated that their necks turned red. However, in the face of the invisible sharp silver thread in front of him, he could not help but feel a chill run down his spine. They totally didn't know how to get close to Yi Qing Luo. Feng Ling's gaze turned cold as she quickly retreated to the black-robed man's side, grabbing him. Quick! He controlled the undead puppets to attack them. The undead corpse puppets are not afraid of those invisible silver threads. It's no use. The undead puppets are useless to them. The black-robed man was already out of breath from Yi Qing Luo's abuse, and after being pulled by Feng Ling in such a rough manner, he could only feel the blood in his throat surging. When wind chimes heard him stutter, she impatiently slapped the black-robed man's face. Shut up. Immediately control the undead corpse puppets for me, or I'll throw you over. The black-robed man was slapped so hard that he spat out the blood in his throat. Coincidentally, it sprayed on Wind Chime's face. The viscous liquid caused Feng Ling's eyes to be filled with killing intent. She raised her sleeve and wiped off the blood on her face. The black-robed man had no choice but to control the corpse puppets to surround them. Tang Beiyuan had reforged the gourd flame fan, and the silver strands had been infused with nether mental power. The corpse puppet was not afraid of the pain and forcefully pulled on the silver threads. Numerous limbs were cut off by the silver threads, as they rolled onto the ground. One by one, the undead corpse puppets fell onto the ground. This scene made the secluded palace's disciples feel fear rising in their hearts. Chapter 32:16. In the hearts of the secluded palace's disciples. Undead puppets were the secluded palace's secret weapon. Impenetrable by swords and spears, impervious to fire and water. It was an essential item for robbing, killing and robbing. But the undead puppets actually were hooked by this invisible silver thread and fell onto the ground unable to get up. Where was the promised impenetrable by swords and spears? Where was the promised immortality? Fairy tales were all lies? The secluded palace's disciples' hearts collapsed. When they were facing Yi Qing Luo, they were subconsciously filled with fear. This fear, their morale was greatly reduced. No matter how many people they had, they were bound to lose. Feng Ling hid behind the crowd as her features twisted. What are you guys in a daze for? Take the chance that the undead puppets are blocking those silver threads and attack. As long as we restrain the both of them, what's there to be afraid of? The secluded palace's disciples were not like those commoners in the safety zone. They could allow Feng Ling to criticize them by the side. The atmosphere was tense, and no one was willing to die. A lady, hiding behind the crowd was fine, but she was still shouting behind the crowd. Instantly, a few secluded palace's disciples grabbed Feng Ling's arm, not showing any tenderness towards the fairer sex as they pulled her to the front. Aren't you going to attack? All right, I'll let you trash go first. In the face of life and death, beauty and whatnot were all fleeting clouds. Moreover, most of the disciples who joined the secluded palace were here for power. No matter how beautiful Feng Ling was, they would not show tenderness towards the fairer sex. Moreover, Feng Ling's heart belonged to Dmo Xian. She had been protected by the imperial palace's granny since young. Absolutely could not do it. That kind of action of using her beauty to ingratiate herself to the men. Usually, Feng Ling put on an aloof look, thinking that she was unreachable. This bunch of secluded palace's ordinary disciples were not fit to talk to her. Because of this, Feng Ling wasn't popular among the dark forces. Feng Ling was forcefully dragged to the front. Her feet stepped on the ground full of broken limbs. Her face was so twisted that it was almost hideous. Let go. Let go. Who dares to touch me? Do you know who I am? If anything happens to me, my granny will absolutely not let you off. Feng Ling struggled with all her might, trying to break free from those people's grip. But how could her power compare to that of the disciples of the Palace of Darkness? Just as Feng Ling was about to be pulled and hit Yi Qing Luo's silver threads in the air. Suddenly, there was a loud explosion outside. Soon after, the man shouted in panic, "Not good, not good. The disciples of Imperial Palace had invaded the base. Quick! Hurry up and let the undead corpse puppets block it." A disciple of the Imperial Palace. Why did he come at this time? This is premeditated. It's over. A disciple of the Imperial Palace? Why were the disciples of the Imperial Palace here? How could they find the location of our base? Most of the disciples and undead corpse puppets were taken away by Captain Elephant. What should we do? The Emperor Palace's disciples cried out in disbelief. They would never believe that this wasn't premeditated by the Imperial Palace. While most of the disciples were taken out by Captain Elephant, these two people had snuck into the secret chamber to attract their attention. They summoned most of the disciples who had stayed in the base to gather in the secret room. The Imperial Palace's disciples started to pounce ferociously. They totally had no way to resist at all. No way. We absolutely cannot sit still and wait for death. Chapter 32:17. The Nether Palace's disciples started to panic. Even the restraints on Feng Ling were loosened. Feng Ling screamed as she struggled to break free from the few of them. Her petite body suddenly disappeared into the crowd and she ran away. At this moment, the disciples outside brought news. The entire secret room was in a state of panic. Feng Ling had escaped and naturally no one cared about it. But Yi Qing Luo, who had been paying attention to Feng Ling, felt a little strange. If she didn't remember wrongly, Feng Ling's profound grade wasn't low. But from the moment Feng Ling appeared to when she made a move and was forcefully pulled away, she didn't sense any profound qi fluctuation from Feng Ling's body. Recalling the time in Valley Wind City, towards Feng Ling's approach, she didn't even notice it. She also didn't sense the slightest fluctuation of profound qi from that little Feng. What was going on? Since Feng Ling joined the Nether Palace, making use of them was to obtain promises or benefits from them. How could it be possible to lose her profound grade? Yi Qing Luo looked at Dmo Xian's side profile. She wondered if Xian had discovered Feng Ling's abnormality. Dmo Xian glanced sideways and met her gaze. He raised his palm and caressed her head. The warmth in his eyes was filled with love. She shook off the other thoughts in her mind as she looked at the Imperial Palace's disciples who had already rushed into the secret room. Let's go. Let's destroy this place to refine the puppets and save these souls. Yi Qing Luo pulled Dmo Xian's hand as she walked towards the direction of the puppet refining vessel. When the Nether Palace's disciples heard this, they immediately wanted to stop them. But behind them, the Imperial Palace's disciples had already swarmed forward. Both parties were entangled in a fight. How could they possibly stop those two figures who were rushing towards the vessel? The 10 over-cultivators who were sitting cross-legged beside the vessel had no way to stop their refining when they heard the fighting sounds. Once they stopped, they would be swallowed by the resentment of those souls in the vessel. There was a possibility that they would be annihilated. They could only clench their teeth and hang on as fast as they could to refine this batch of puppets. Just at this moment, the dozen or so profound practitioners clearly felt a chill that covered the sky and covered the earth as it pressed down on them. A cold and gloomy aura lingered around them. He could vaguely hear the clear and melodious voice of a young girl. Although, you were forced by the Palace of Darkness to do such a heartless thing. But what you did is what you did. In order to survive, your hands were stained with too much blood. All the profound practitioners felt their hearts tighten. Then the second half of the young woman's words rang out. Therefore, take your sins with you, and enter hell with the souls that you have refined. You must atone for your sins. A few profound practitioners suddenly opened their eyes. What entered his eyes was a beautiful face that resembled that of a fairy from the ninth heaven who had descended to the mortal world. The young girl's eyes were cold and emotionless. Their eyes widened in shock. He was absent-minded. The resentment in the containers instantly corroded their internal organs. The profound practitioners convulsed in pain. The next moment, they felt as if their bodies were being burned by a raging fire. Even his soul was being torn apart. They realized that they had been thrown into a refining vessel. Together with the souls and resentment that were being refined, they burned in the raging fire. Rumble. The last sound they heard was a deafening explosion. Chapter 32:18. There was no turning back for the base of Dark Palace in the Southwater continent. At this time outside Valley Wind City, an extremely difficult battle was going on. Countless dead corpse puppets madly attacked the city gate. The disciples of Dark Palace, the soldiers in armor, and a group of people in the clothes of the Imperial Palace were facing each other with swords and swords, murderous intent soaring to the sky. Endless dark force soared to the sky. The war drums roared, and smoke rose everywhere. Endless killing dyed this piece of land red. Xiang Shengfa sat on the back of a huge tiger-shaped magical beast, squinting his eyes and carefully watching the battle. He thought that today's quiet attack would definitely be able to take down Valley Wind City. Unexpectedly, the old guy in Valley Wind City had long been prepared. It was like he had long known that the Dark Palace would attack Valley Wind City at this time. This thought made Xiang Shengfa's heart a little confused. He always felt that something was about to happen. However, the disciples of Dark Palace and more than 500 dead corpse puppets had already arrived at the battlefield outside Valley Wind City. It was impossible to turn around and leave now. Even if he wanted to, the Palace of Gloomy Darkness probably wouldn't agree either. So Xiang Shengfa could only bite the bullet. However, he didn't expect that in this Valley Wind City, not only the soldiers of the Southwater continent who were struggling at death's door, there were also the disciples from the Imperial Palace. Those disciples of the Imperial Palace had obviously been waiting on the side. When they made their move, they swarmed up. If it weren't for the obstruction of the disciples of the Imperial Palace, this battle would never have lasted until now. Xiang Shengfa's face darkened, staring at the disciples of Dark Palace who couldn't gain the upper hand at all. He became more and more anxious in his heart. Today's battle, the Dark Palace absolutely couldn't lose. Otherwise, he couldn't explain to the people above. And it was very likely that he would lose his life because of this. In his ears, there was still the deafening battle cry. There were people on both sides, constantly falling down. The attack of the dead corpse puppets didn't reverse the situation at all. Xiang Shengfa's eyes kept looking in another direction. He didn't know when his little Mu would send the other dead corpse puppets over. Captain Elephant, an old woman who claims to have been instructed by Lady Xiaofeng, wishes to see you. A disciple of the Palace of Gloomy Darkness stepped forward and spoke in a low voice. If it was a normal day, encountering such ordinary people, the people from Gloomy Palace would definitely be killed in one slash. However, during the fierce battle, the old woman said that she was instructed by Miss Xiaofeng to help them win the battle. On top of that, there was indeed not the slightest fluctuation of profound energy on the old woman's body. In the end, the secluded Darkness Palace disciple decided to report it. Xiaofeng? Who was it? Xiang Shengfa frowned. The Palace of Darkness disciple immediately repeated the old lady's words. Xiang Shengfa's frown deepened. This could very well be a trap. Then, the disciple of secluded Darkness Palace made a throat-slitting gesture. No hurry. Xiang Shengfa raised his hand. Call her over. Let's hear what she has to say. Not long after, a disciple of the Palace of Gloomy Darkness brought an old man who was walking unsteadily. Under the smoke of war, the old man was shivering. His wrinkled old face was full of fear and fear. Why are you looking for me? Xiang Shengfa purposely released his power to oppress the old woman. Chapter 32:19. We are the citizens of Valley Wind City. We can secretly help you to open the door at the back of the city, so that you can sneak into Valley Wind City and kill those soldiers. The old lady's words made Xiang Xingfei's eyes lit up. Is what you said true? Absolutely true. The old lady nodded her head vigorously. You are the citizens of Valley Wind City. Why do you want to help our Palace of Darkness? Xiang Xingfei asked suspiciously. The old lady's eyes flashed a sinister look. Today's Valley Wind City's soldiers have been bewitched by that demoness called Yi Qing Luo. In order to please that demoness, the soldiers have no intention to let us ordinary citizens live on. If we want to live, we can only think of a way ourselves. As she said that, she raised her head and looked at Xiang Xingfei with a hopeful look. Miss Xiaofeng said that as long as we are willing to help you take over the South Continent, you will protect our lives. Who is this Xiaofeng that you mentioned? Xiang Xingfei narrowed his eyes. The old lady was stunned. Miss Xiaofeng said that she is especially familiar with you. She even asked me to send her regards to young Master C. Xiang Xingfei's eyes sunk. Xiaofeng? Could it be Fengling? Although Xiang Xingfei had his doubts, but looking at Palace of Darkness, there was no way to break through. After thinking for a moment, he decided to believe this old lady for once. An old lady without any profound qi. She wouldn't dare to play any tricks. All right, I promise you. As long as you open the back door of the city and let us sneak in, you will be the heroes of Palace of Darkness. I guarantee that your days in Palace of Darkness will be much better than in the South Continent. Xiang Xingfei's lips curled into an evil smile. Coincidentally, Palace of Darkness needed a batch of fresh fodder. Although these people's souls were a little ordinary, but at least it could increase the strength of the puppets. The old lady couldn't tell what Xiang Xingfei was thinking. Just hearing that they would become heroes, she was already nodding her head in joy. Heroes. That also meant that there was a possibility that they could become an official. The old lady was extremely excited. Then I will go back and tell everyone. Wait here, we will open the door immediately. The old woman sneaked back to Gufeng City. At this time, those who could fight were already fighting on the front lines. No one noticed the old woman's figure. However, when the old woman secretly returned to Valley Wind City, her sneaky appearance attracted the attention of the soldiers who were anxiously watching the battle from afar, who were recuperating in the inn. Why are the people still walking around in the midst of war? The soldiers who were recuperating looked strangely at the soldiers beside them. Why does Granny Wang look so sneaky? The soldiers who were recuperating looked at each other. After a while, Old Mistress Wang walked out of the safe zone again. She was carrying a large vat with several broken bowls hanging from it. Everyone, you've all worked hard. It's all thanks to you that we're all well protected. I don't know what else I can do for you all, but I can only brew a cup of hot tea for you all at this time. Old Maid Wang smiled at the soldiers guarding the gate. The soldiers naturally did not suspect anything. He took the bowl and drank a few mouthfuls. Old Maid Wang carried the vat and walked towards the entrance of the inn. Chapter 32:20. The soldiers who were recuperating pretended to drink the hot tea, but in fact, they poured the hot tea aside when Old Maid Wang was not paying attention. Old Maid Wang was an ordinary person, so naturally she could not see the soldiers' movements. She thought they had all drunk the hot tea. Then she walked to the soldiers who were still staying in Valley Wine City, with a big jar in her arms. After that, she returned to the safe zone. But after a while, the two soldiers who were guarding the gate of the safe zone fell down in a daze. Seeing this, the soldiers who were recuperating at the gate immediately pretended to faint on the ground. The soldiers opened their eyes. Then they saw the gate of the safe zone was opened. Old Maid Wang stuck her head out. After seeing the two soldiers lying on the ground, she smiled. Then she looked in the direction of the inn. Several soldiers immediately closed their eyes. Old Maid Wang's voice came. They have all fallen. Let's go there now. Soon after, a large wave of civilians walked out of the safe zone one after another. At a glance, there were at least 100 people. They were obviously in a very good mood. They could not hide their smiles. The direction where more than 100 people were going. The soldiers who pretended to faint suddenly felt their hearts tremble. These commoners, could it be that they were? No way? The soldiers already had a guess in their hearts. But they still did not want to believe the guess they had. But looking at the direction where the people were going, they did not dare to bet on this trust. One of the soldiers who was the least injured struggled to support his bandaged leg and limped toward the direction of the city gate. He had to tell the general about the people's actions. At this time, Old Maid Wang came to the back door of the city with a group of people. She knocked hard on the back door 3 times according to the agreement with Holy Technique of Elephant. Soon, she got a response from Holy Technique of Elephant. Old Maid Wang looked happy and called the people behind her. "Come on, open the back door with me. Don't let those soldiers find out." The back door was closed very tightly, and the 3 wooden bars on the door were extremely heavy. It took a lot of effort for the group of people. Only then could he open the back door without making too much noise. At the door, a row of tall corpse puppets stood there expressionlessly. Behind the undead puppets were a group of disciples with their weapons raised high. When the crowd of commoners saw the row of corpse puppets in front of them and the rotten flesh on their faces falling off, their faces turned pale with fright, and they hurriedly retreated. Xiang Shengfa was behind the disciples of Gloomy Palace. He carefully observed the situation inside the back door. He had thought that this might be a trap. He purposely placed the corpse puppet in front of him. From the looks of it, this group of commoners had really rebelled. Xiang Shengfa ordered his undead puppets to scout ahead. The group of monsters with rotten flesh on their faces and the stench of feces all over their bodies began to walk into the city. The commoners were so frightened that they wanted to scream. "Shut up. All of you shut up. If the Grand General finds out, our plan will fail." Old Maid Wang growled in a low voice. The commoners covered their mouths. He was so scared that his eyes turned red. One by one, their legs went soft, and they retreated to the sides as if they were escaping. The corpse puppets entered the city and walked for a long time. Nothing out of the ordinary happened. Chapter 32:21. Well done. Xiang Shengfa looked at Old Maid Wang with admiration, and immediately ordered the secluded palace's disciples to investigate. The secluded palace's disciples carefully walked into the city. Their gazes searched around the city vigilantly. One of the secluded palace's disciples noticed the 2 soldiers lying on the ground at the back door. They went up to check. They had indeed fainted. Hearing this news, Xiang Shengfa was finally relieved. He waved his hand and allowed the secluded palace's disciples to enter Valley Wind City. The entire Valley Wind City was empty and in ruins. Xiang Shengfa's vision was fixed on the city gate, on those soldiers who were still fighting hard. The corners of his mouth curled up into a cold smile. This time, everyone in Valley Wind City couldn't escape. They wanted to take this opportunity to destroy Valley Wind City, completely occupy the South Continent, bring all these commoners to the base. Xiang Shengfa pointed at 2 people and ordered, "The rest follow me and kill our way up the city walls of Valley Wind City. Whoever can take down that old fogey's head will be heavily rewarded." The secluded palace's disciples waved the weapons in their hands. In case they were discovered by the soldiers in Valley Wind City, they didn't dare to make a sound. But from the strength of their waving weapons and the expression on their faces, it was enough to tell the joy in their hearts. A group of commoners followed the 2 secluded palace's disciples and left. The others followed Xiang Shengfa and quickly headed towards the direction of the city walls. The soldier with leg injury who rushed over from the inn to report finally reached the bottom of the city walls. That originally bandaged leg was oozing blood. The situation was urgent, and the soldiers were working together to resist against the secluded palace. They didn't pay attention to the soldier with leg injury. Mo Yuing, who was left behind by Yi Qing Luo in Valley Wind City, noticed the soldier with leg injury. She jumped down from the city walls and her little hand grabbed the soldier's arm. Her flat eyes fixed on him. "Why did you come out? Your leg injury has split open." That flat voice, that strange empty gaze. The soldier with the leg injury was shocked. Mo Yuing stiffly frowned and released his hand, pulling a distance between them. "Go back." The soldier with the leg injury came back to his senses and hurriedly shook his head. Something has happened. Mo Yuing blinked a few times. Her pair of cute and adorable eyes said, "What's the matter? Let's talk after the fight." "No, it's not that." The soldier with the leg injury hurriedly recounted the scene he had seen with the people just now in a concise manner. Then he hurriedly said, "I suspect the citizens might want to open the back door of the city and let the people from the Palace of Darkness in. If that's the case, we're in a situation where we're attacked from both sides. It's very dangerous. That group of white-eyed wolves, they actually did this." Obviously, these words were said in anger, but when they came out of Mo Ying's mouth, they were actually words that did not have any fluctuations of emotion. Mo Ying frowned. "Go back to the inn first, leave the rest to us." After saying that, her small body suddenly jumped. In the blink of an eye, the little girl, who looked like a pink dumpling, was already standing beside the general. The soldier stared in the direction where the little girl had disappeared and stared blankly for a long time. Actually, that little girl didn't know how to express her thoughts with her facial expressions. No matter how one looked at her, she was a very cute, very adorable young lady. Mo Ying repeated the words of the injured soldier to the great general. When the general heard that, his face sunk. He immediately changed tactics and ordered the soldiers to defend the back door. But Chapter 32-22. Surround all the soldiers on the city wall. Xiangsheng Fa's command was heard from behind. One by one, the undead corpse puppets rushed to the front at an extremely fast speed and surrounded the city walls. Fortunately, the soldier with the leg injury reported in time. Great General's command was timely. The moment the undead puppets rushed forward, the generals and soldiers were all fully prepared. But they weren't hurt by the undead puppets. Xiangsheng Fa sat on the tiger beast's back as he squinted his eyes with a victorious posture. "Old man, you still want to resist at this stage?" He sneered. "Pincer attack, even if you have the ability to transcend the heavens, you won't win this battle." The moment the great general saw Xiangsheng Fa and the secluded palace's disciple appear, his face turned steely green. This meant that the soldier with the leg injury was right. That group of commoners whom they risked their lives to protect betrayed them, betrayed the South Continent. For the secluded palace, for the bunch of secluded palace who destroyed their homeland, they opened the city's back door. His heart was filled with anger. Most of it was the guilt towards those brothers who had died for the commoners. If it was possible, he really didn't want to care about the armor that he was wearing, to serve the commoners. To kill those ingrates with his own hands. To comfort the souls of his brothers in heaven. Even the commoners are willing to rely on us. That shows how useless you are. They can't see any hope of survival from you. Old man, just surrender obediently. Xiangsheng Fa looked at the great general's furious expression, and that blackish charcoal expression. He was feeling more and more delighted. Pfft. The great general spat fiercely as he stared solemnly at Xiangsheng Fa. "Don't even think about it. Since you want this city to be stained with blood, then I shall fulfill your wish." Xiangsheng Fa sneered as he waved his hand. "Pincer attack, attack." The great general's expression darkened as he swiftly ordered the soldiers to defend. This situation was really not friendly to the great general. Xiangsheng Fa entered Valley Wind City. Their advantage instantly turned into a disadvantage. Under the pincer attack, even though they had the weapons which Yiqing Luo left behind to fight against the undead puppets, that was already extremely taxing. Bright red blood stained the ground. It also dyed the armors of the soldiers red. The clothes of the imperial palace's disciples were dyed red. Gradually, the palace of gloomy darkness advantage increased. Xiangsheng Fa was getting more and more smug. When little Mumu brings another batch of undead puppets, the South Tide continent will completely belong to Dark Nether Palace. And a bunch of undead puppets? When the great general heard this, his face turned ashen. If another batch of undead puppets came, they definitely wouldn't be able to defend it. Even with the help of the brave Emperor Palace's disciples, perhaps Goofing City, it would be difficult for them to escape the fate of destruction. In his mind, The words of the young girl that the soldier had brought rang out again. The soldier's voice overlapped with the girl's. As long as you can defend Valley Wind City, I guarantee that the South Tide continent will return to its former peace. The general's eyes flickered, looking at the sky full of bloody light in front of him. The disciples of the Dark Palace and the corpse puppets had already charged over. His heart felt like it was being heavily pressed by a huge rock. He was afraid. He could not hold on any longer. What if they couldn't hold on any longer? No way. On his shoulders, he was carrying the entire South Tide continent. Chapter 32-23. Suddenly, a pink figure flashed past in front of the great general. The little girl, who was dressed in pink, dashed towards the direction of the Elephant Saint technique at an extremely fast speed. Miss Mo. The great general's expression congealed as he hurriedly shouted. This Mo Ying was the Imperial Madam's good sister. If anything happened to Miss Mo, how could the Imperial Madam let him off? Mo Ying didn't seem to hear the great general's shout. In a blink of an eye, she appeared in front of Xiangsheng Fa. Xiangsheng Fa only felt a gust of chilly wind. He flipped over and jumped up from the tiger beast's back. Bam! A pink furry ball hit nothing but air. However, that remnant might shook the fluctuations in the air, spreading out layer by layer like ripples. Xiangsheng Fa was stunned by this power. He frowned slightly as he stared at the little girl who was rushing over. This girl. Who was she? Why? How could there be such a strong power? Yi Qing Luo, that wretched lass. Why were there so many strange people around her? Dodged. Mo Ying's mechanical voice rang calmly. That voice was so stiff that there wasn't any emotion. Xiangsheng Fa inexplicably felt his scalp go numb, especially when he met the little girl's pair of empty, beautiful eyes. The numbness on his scalp became more and more intense. Strange. It was too strange. Xiangsheng Fa's intuition told him. He absolutely couldn't go against this little girl. This little girl was so strange that compared to Yi Qing Luo, she was even scarier. But he didn't want to fight with Mo Ying. But Mo Ying had obviously set her sights on him. Xiangsheng Fa had no choice but to fight back. Kill. Take this chance to exterminate the dead corpse puppets. The great general understood Mo Ying's meaning, and immediately ordered those 10 over soldiers who were holding weapons to exterminate the dead corpse puppets. Without Xiangsheng Fa's command, those dead corpse puppets only knew how to follow the previous command. It was much easier for the soldiers to kill them. Both sides were entangled in battle again. Mo Ying's attacks were getting fiercer and fiercer. She stared at Xiangsheng Fa indifferently. Qing Luo said to capture the leader first. Stop struggling. If you anger me, the consequences will be severe. Elephant Saint technique swiftly evaded Mo Ying's 2 furry dumplings attack as he unleashed his profound qi. Little girl, your ability is so strong. Why are you willing to submit to Yi Qing Luo? If you are willing to join the Palace of Gloomy Darkness, I guarantee that you will definitely shine. He carefully stared at Mo Ying as he tried to brainwash her. This little girl seemed to be inexperienced. If they could persuade him to surrender, then he killed it in one move. That would be easy. But unexpectedly, the little girl in front of him did not show any jealousy or any other expression as he had expected. A pair of empty eyes, completely devoid of emotion. Don't shine, don't give off heat, just be clear. Her voice was still as stiff as ever. Her slender fingers hooked onto the fluffy ball of powder hanging in front of her chest and flew out. Xiangsheng Fa's face darkened. Zhang Xian moved his palms and began his counterattack. Suddenly, his body seemed to be controlled by a strange force, unable to move. The next moment, his chest was heavily smashed by those 2 fluffy balls of powder. Puffed! A big mouthful of blood spurted out from Xiangsheng Fa's mouth. His body flew out and fell heavily onto the ground. The ground split open and he was embedded in the gravel. Xiangsheng Fa was in so much pain that his face contorted. Chapter 32-24. At this moment, a gloomy voice suddenly appeared in Xiangsheng Fa's mind. Trash, you can't even do such a small thing. What use do I have for you? The voice was so deep that it made people panic. The moment Xiangsheng Fa heard the voice, His whole body stiffened. Even the pain in his body was thrown to the back of his mind. Palace master, he replied in a trembling voice in his mind. The gloomy voice continued. That woman called Mo Ying is not an ordinary person. Ordinary methods can't deal with her. Xiang Xingfa shuddered. Then, what do you think I should do, Palace Lord? Trash. The gloomy voice sneered. Although it was ethereal, Xiang Xingfa could feel a chill spreading on his scalp. Mo Ying's soul is strange. I'll lend this to you. There was a ding sound. Something hit Xiang Xingfa's face. If the mission fails again, I'll refine all the people of the dark forces into dead puppets. Palace master. Xiang Xingfa's lips trembled. He grabbed the thing on his face and said in his mind, Subordinate will obey Palace master's order. Only the sound of the wind responded to him. The chill also gradually disappeared. Xiang Xingfa suddenly sat up from the ground. He looked around. He didn't find any trace of Palace master. That voice, where did it come from? Palace master. Is he here too? Xiang Xingfa grabbed the thing left by Palace master. He endured the pain from Mo Ying's attack and raised his hand. He saw in his palm. He was holding a dagger in his hand. It was a pitch-black dagger with no other colors. It looked extremely strange. This dagger. What is it used for? Does Palace master mean to use this dagger? To deal with Mo Ying? And Palace master said, Mo Ying's soul is strange. What does that mean? Holding the dagger, Xiang Xingfa was thinking about Palace master's words. Once again, Mo Ying launched another attack. The cold wind made Xiang Xingfa's hair stand on end. His eyes widened. At the moment when Mo Ying attacked, his arm was being controlled by an invisible force. He suddenly raised his hand, ignoring Mo Ying's 2 balls of powder, and forcefully stabbed the dagger into Mo Ying's shoulder. Ah! Xiang Xingfa felt as if his internal organs were being crushed by the 2 balls of powder, and they were all broken. Waves of pain caused him to be unable to straighten his body. He was in great pain. He didn't see anything either. In front of him, the girl whose dagger had been stabbed by him suddenly froze on the spot. Mo Ying slowly lowered her head and expressionlessly looked at her shoulder, at the dagger with only the handle exposed. Her lifeless eyes flickered for a moment. It was very subtle, not obvious, and disappeared in a flash. The next moment, as if she had lost all her strength, her petite body fell limply to the ground. Miss Mo. The great general noticed Mo Ying's situation, and immediately killed the Palace of Darkness disciple in front of him and rushed over. General, don't go over. Miss Mo. Look at her. A soldier's voice was full of fear as he stopped the great general. When the great general got closer, he noticed Mo Ying had fallen to the ground. Her petite body was actually enveloped by a black aura. Her petite body was faintly discernible within the black aura. Chapter 32-25. What's going on? What happened to Miss Mo? Miss Mo wouldn't she be assimilated by the Palace of Darkness? The soldier said with a trembling voice. The general's face darkened. This black chi was indeed strange. However, it felt different from the cold black chi released by the Palace of Darkness. But he couldn't be sure. The black chi on Mo Ying had nothing to do with the Palace of Darkness. The general stood still and pondered for a long time. In the end, he walked towards Mo Ying. This was the friend of the emperor's wife. How could he watch coldly and let the friend of the emperor's wife perish on her own? The general was about to approach Mo Ying and help her up. Then he heard the dull voice coming from the black chi. Get out of the way, don't worry about me. The voice was as indifferent as ever. But he could hear it. Her aura was much weaker. Miss Mo. The general said worriedly, frowning tightly. I'll send you to a safe place to rest first. You can't have an accident. Defend Valley Wind City. Mo Ying said word by word in a rigid tone. After the voice fell, her petite body trembled and curled up again. It seemed that there was a painful feeling spreading in her body. The black chi that enveloped her was getting thicker and thicker. General. Not good. Another group of undead puppets and disciples of the Palace of Darkness are coming from the Palace of Darkness. Suddenly, The shouts of the soldiers came from not far away. The general was startled and turned to look at the soldiers in shock. The soldiers were also full of fear. "General, what should we do? Now we are already at a disadvantage. Another group of undead puppets and disciples of the Palace of Darkness are coming. We can't hold on." Not far away, after hearing the shouts of the soldiers, Xiang Xingfa, whose internal organs had been broken by Mo Ying's powder ball, heard the shouts of the soldiers. He couldn't help but be ecstatic. It must be his little Moo. It must be his little Moo coming. Battle cries rang out as they charged forward. Another group of undead puppets and disciples of the Palace of Darkness joined in. The pressure on the soldiers of Valley Wind City was even greater. The general was forced to pick up his weapon and deal with the enemy in front of him first. Little by little, the soldiers of Valley Wind City retreated more and more, and the range became smaller and smaller. Finally, the soldiers of Valley Wind City and the disciples of the Imperial Palace could only stay near the Valley Wind City wall. He was surrounded by the pincer attack from the Palace of Darkness. The great general and the first-rate soldiers kept retreating while protecting Mo Ying within the range of their protection. "Great general, what should we do?" The soldiers nervously stared at the undead corpse puppets around them and asked in a low voice. The general gripped his spear tightly. "Delay. Wait until Madame D and the others return." But, there was simply no way to drag this out. The current situation. The only option was to abandon the city and flee. Otherwise, all of them would be buried here. The soldiers wanted to say the rest, but they didn't dare to. Everyone could see that. There was no way the great general would choose to abandon the city and flee. The atmosphere was extremely tense. The corpses of the Netherworld Palace slowly closed the encirclement. Cough, cough, cough. Xiang Xingfa coughed and panted heavily. He reached out to the disciples of Gloomy Palace and said, You're here to save my captain, right? Quick, carry me back." Chapter 32-26. Little Mumu. Where's little Mumu? Xiang Xingfa was startled and immediately shouted. A pair of malicious eyes glared at the disciples of the Palace of Darkness who bypassed him and rushed to the city wall. "Little Mumu?" Suddenly, a charming voice was heard. Immediately, a fragrant wind wafted through the air. A beautiful figure walked gracefully past the surrounding disciples of the Palace of Darkness and slowly walked over. The woman covered her bright red lips and giggled. "What a pity, your little Mumu is not here yet." When Xiang Xingfa's gaze landed on the concubine's figure, his pupils suddenly widened. There seemed to be something stuck in his neck. Dai. Ah Dai, it's you. The person who came was one of the 4 great saint techniques of the dark forces, the only woman, Butterfly Saint Technique. The Butterfly Saint Technique smiled flirtatiously. "Ah Xiang, it's really not easy to see you half dead. Ah Dai, save me." Xiang Xingfa's lips were trembling violently. Butterfly Saint Technique's smile was even more flirtatious. But in her eyes, there was a flash of resentment. She chuckled softly. "Save you? In the beginning, when you pushed me into the refining vessel of the corpse puppet for Si Yanmu, did you ever think of saving me?" Xiang Xingfa's face turned pale. I just made a mistake, it wasn't my intention." It wasn't my intention." Butterfly Saint Technique's smile was even more charming. "Then I'm not willing to save you now and I want you to die here. It's also not my intention." "Ah Dai, you can't do this." Xiang Xingfa moved his hands in a panic. We are all working for the Palace of Darkness. Palace Master appeared just now. If I die, you won't be able to explain it to Palace Master, right? It's a pity." Butterfly Saint Technique bent down and looked down at Xiang Xingfa. "It was Palace Master who asked me to come here, because Palace Master doesn't trust your ability at all, you useless thing." After saying that, she lifted her foot and ruthlessly stomped on Xiang Xingfa's chest. "Don't worry, I won't let you be lonely. After you die, I will immediately send your beloved Si Yanmu to accompany you." The Butterfly Saint Law's eyes burned with hatred. She concentrated her dark force on her feet and exerted force. Her foot pierced through the heart of the sacred elephant. The great general and the others watched as the two from the Palace of Gloom suddenly killed each other. The elephant holy technique, who had been clamoring to take over their Valley Wind city, died in the hands of the Palace of Darkness just like that. The soldiers looked at the sacred butterfly technique with even more fear. This woman was even scarier than Elephant Saint Dharma. After the butterfly saint technique dealt with the elephant saint technique, she wasn't in a hurry to attack the soldiers. Her graceful figure slowly walked towards Mo Ying, who was shrouded in black qi. She bent down and pulled out the black dagger that was stuck in Mo Ying's shoulder. Mo Ying groaned in pain. "You're the little guy that the palace master wants." The butterfly saint technique indifferently glanced at the dagger in her hand, then slowly shifted her gaze to Mo Ying. You stay away from Miss Mo. What do you want to do to Miss Mo? The great general and the soldiers wanted to rush forward, but were stopped by the disciples of the Palace of Darkness in the front row. Chapter 32:27. How dare you? The great general's eyes widened as he bellowed furiously. Miss Mo is a good friend of the Imperial Palace's mistress. If you touch Miss Mo, the Overlord will not let you off. Butterfly Saint Technique's smile was incomparably gorgeous. Great General, I'm afraid you still don't know about the grudge between us and that little slut Yiqing Luo. If you didn't mention her, I could still be a little gentler, but you. The next moment, Butterfly Saint Technique's expression turned gloomy and her tone was filled with viciousness. If you want to blame yourself for being that little bastard's friend. Butterfly Saint Technique's fingers suddenly clenched tightly. That jet-black dagger seemed to be shrouded in a layer of black light. Her eyes were filled with malice as she suddenly stabbed towards Mo Ying's body. Mo Ying, who was shrouded in black qi, was unable to move, but her consciousness was very clear. She tried her best to adjust the profound energy in her body, trying to avoid that dagger which was heading towards her. But no matter how much she tried to concentrate, the profound energy in her body was like a plate of loose sand, floating in her body. Indistinctly, there seemed to be something tearing her body. No, it wasn't her body that was tearing. It was soul. She could clearly feel it. Her soul was slowly peeling away from her body. Mo Ying panted. His usually emotionless face now revealed a pained expression. It had been a long time since she felt pain. Looks like this black dagger was deliberately targeted at her. Mo Ying shut her eyes tightly. Godless Island must have something to do with the secluded palace to be able to obtain this black dagger. Over at the Godless Island. Finally couldn't hold it in any longer? Finally wanted to destroy her. Island Saint? Godless Island. Godless Palace. Mo Ying's fingers tightened, but because of the tearing feeling in her body, she loosened her grip helplessly. Mo Ying's thoughts were running wild, but in reality, it was just a blink of an eye. Butterfly Saint Technique, who was holding the black dagger, had a sinister glint in her eyes as she stabbed towards Mo Ying's face. Clang! There was a loud sound of collision. Mo Ying didn't feel an even more painful pain than she had imagined. Her eyelashes fluttered, and she slowly opened her eyes. In front of him, a red feather fan that seemed to be burning with raging flames pressed against the black dagger. The hand that held the feather fan was slender and fair, sparkling and translucent like fine jade. It was as if the owner of the hand had casually blocked the black dagger. Mo Ying's empty eyes slightly widened, revealing a rarely seen surprise and joy. Sacred butterfly technique. Did you ask for my permission to stab my little shadow a few times? A clear and melodious voice rang out leisurely on the battlefield. It was clearly a sweet and smiling voice. However, when the people present heard it, they could not help but feel a chill run down their spines, a bone-chilling coldness. When the butterfly saint technique heard this voice, her body stiffened. Her hand that was holding the black arm trembled uncontrollably. Following the raging flame feather fan, the butterfly saint technique's line of sight slowly focused on the owner of the feather fan. Yiqing Luo's arrival was within her expectations, but also unexpected. After all, from the start of the war till now, Mo Xian and Yiqing Luo had never appeared. Unexpected, because before the secluded palace took action, Fengling had solemnly vowed that she had a way to delay Yiqing Luo and Mo Xian. Chapter 32:28. And within his expectations. Was because of Yi Qing Luo. That unstable factor. With Yi Qing Luo around, everything was possible. The butterfly saint technique stared blankly at Yi Qing Luo, staring at that fiery red robe with an enchanting smile on her face. His gaze then slowly shifted to the young girl. The man dressed in billowing purple robes who looked like a banished immortal. Inexplicably, the butterfly saint technique felt her legs turn to jelly. Shadow. Yi Qing Luo didn't look at the butterfly saint technique anymore, but squatted down and stretched out her hand to support Mo Yuing. Don't touch me. Mo Yuing hurriedly opened her mouth. Her voice was like a machine, as if it was in fast forward. As soon as she finished speaking, her eyebrows knitted tightly together. Looking at Mo Yuing's painful expression, how could Yi Qing Luo's hand stop? Don't talk anymore, I'm here, everything is fine now. Yi Qing Luo's hand stretched out towards Mo Yuing. Don't know. It will devour. Mo Yuing anxiously wanted to avoid it. But the words that came out of his mouth were suddenly stuck in his throat. Because Yi Qing Luo's hand passed through the black qi on her body and touched her body. The soft little hands caused Mo Yuing's delicate body to tremble. Then, Mo Yuing felt that the tearing pain in her body, the feeling of her soul leaving her body, was easily suppressed by that hand. Mo Yuing's beautiful eyes were slightly startled. His empty and lifeless eyes were fixated on Yi Qing Luo's hand. That hand seemed to have the ability to purify. It purified all the black aura around her. Her petite body was hugged by the girl's slender arms that gave her a sense of security. It's all right now with me around, no one can hurt you. Yi Qing Luo's voice was light, but it was filled with warmth that made one feel at ease. Mo Yuing's eyelashes fluttered as she stared blankly at the face that was so close to her. His heart had not fluctuated at all. At this moment, there were faint signs of recovery. Whoosh! Suddenly, Mo Yuing's sharp senses detected an icy cold intent coming from the side. She quickly moved her eyes and looked in the direction of the cold attack. Then he met with a pair of icy cold eyes. That was Dizun. Why was the overlord staring at her like that? Mo Yuing blinked her eyes as she tilted her head, looking at Mo Xian whose expression was getting darker and darker. Noticing Mo Yuing's movements, Yi Qing Luo's vision also looked over. After seeing Mo Xian's expression, Yi Qing Luo rolled her eyes at him. I treat Shadow as my younger sister, so hugging her is very normal. Could it be that? You want to hug her? Mo Xian's face sank as he spat out two words. No. Then why are you glaring at my shadow for? Yi Qing Luo shielded Mo Yuing as she hugged her tightly. Mo Xian's face darkened further. No matter how slow Mo Yuing's reaction was, at this moment he had a strong feeling. The overlord seemed like he wanted to forcefully pull her out from Qing Luo's embrace. Cough. Well, let me take care of Shadow. Yan Xiaoyi saw the overlord's expression and rushed out to smooth things over. She took Mo Yuing from Yi Qing Luo's arms. Qing Luo, settle the secluded palace's side first. I'll take care of the Shadow, I'll take care of it. Saying that, she used her peripheral vision to shoot a glance at Mo Xian's direction. Mo Yuing was switched into Yan Xiaoyi's arms just like that. Mo Xian's expression then took a turn for the better. Yi Qing Luo. Chapter 32:29. Yi Qing Luo stared fiercely at Mo Xian before shifting her gaze onto Butterfly Saint Dharma. Her lips curled up as she smiled sweetly. Butterfly Saint Dharma seems to be very shocked to see me? Butterfly Saint Dharma stared at Yi Qing Luo as her heart started to feel uneasy. It had only been a few months since she last met Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo's aura, as compared to before, was much more oppressive. She still remembered the first time she met Yi Qing Luo. Although Yi Qing Luo had a little bit of intelligence, her reaction was extremely fast. But standing beside the overlord, she was just a young lady who could only rely on the overlord to survive. She even felt that she could totally kill Yi Qing Luo easily. But just a few short months, Yi Qing Luo had already grown to standing beside the overlord. It would not cover up her radiance. As though only she had the right to stand beside the overlord. Butterfly Saint Dharma's heart trembled fiercely. Yi Qingluo's growth. Even she, when facing Yi Qingluo, wanted to give way, to avoid Yi Qingluo's sharpness. I'm also quite shocked to see you. Yi Qingluo continued to smile as she spoke. She didn't feel awkward because Butterfly Saint Dharma didn't reply her. She smiled sweetly. Shouldn't the mission of invading South Continent be Butterfly Saint Dharma? Butterfly Saint Dharma took a deep breath as she clenched her fists, pretending to be calm. Yi Qingluo, South Continent secluded palace is mine. That young lady, secluded palace is also mine. If you know what's good for you, hand over that young lady, otherwise. Her face sunk as she spoke sinisterly. You don't wish for these soldiers, Imperial Palace's disciples, and your friends to be infected by the large number of dead corpses, right? As Butterfly Saint Dharma said that, her heart gradually gained some confidence. She raised her chin. I know you have ways to deal with the dead corpses. But a large number of dead corpses. Are you sure you have a way to deal with them? When Yi Qingluo heard that, she giggled softly. Butterfly Saint Dharma, are you sure? Those threats that you said will come true? Are you sure I don't have a way to destroy a large number of undead corpse puppets in one go? You can try. A layer of frost appeared on the Butterfly Sacred Technique's beautiful face. Yi Qingluo's long and narrow eyes rose slightly as her lips curled into an enchanting smile. Looks like Butterfly Saint Technique still doesn't know what happened in the Palace of Seclusion. She touched her chin and smiled wickedly. Holy Butterfly Technique, do you want to know where my dear Xian and I rushed back to Valley Wind City? The Butterfly Saint Technique's face stiffened. She had a vague guess in her heart. East of the city, behind the ruined temple. Yi Qingluo stared at the Butterfly Saint Technique's eyes as she slowly spat out her red lips word by word. The Butterfly Saint Technique's face suddenly turned pale. So, I'm afraid the reinforcements that you've been longing for won't be able to rush over. Yi Qingluo's eyebrows were as enchanting as a painting, but the words that came out of her mouth were bone-chilling. No, impossible. The Butterfly Saint Technique's face turned pale as she instinctively staggered a step back. How could you possibly find that place? How? Yi Qingluo's long and narrow eyes swept past the Valley Wind City, surrounding the Palace of Seclusion's disciples. The smile beneath her eyes was tainted with a hint of coldness. Chapter 32:30. Who was it? Butterfly Saint Law's pupils dilated. A figure appeared in her mind. Feng Ling. It was Feng Ling who told them with absolute certainty. She had a way to delay Yi Qingluo and Dmo Xian. She had a way to make use of Valley Wind City's ordinary citizens' trust towards her, to help Secluded Palace to attack Valley Wind City. It was because of this. After Elephant Saint Law finished probing, that was why the Butterfly Saint Technique had brought her team to the battlefield. What Butterfly Saint Law wanted to do. Not only did she want to take revenge on Xiang Xingfa, who had pushed her into the vessel of the corpse puppet for Si Yanmu, and almost made her feed to the corpse puppet, and to take the credit for attacking Valley Wind City. But Yi Qingluo appeared. Dmo Xian appeared. And not only did he appear, he also resolved Secluded Palace's base in Southwave's continent. The base was resolved. It was equivalent to Secluded Palace's power in Southwave's continent had been disbanded, which represented Secluded Palace's current power, which left only Valley Wind City's surroundings were surrounded by these Secluded Palace's disciples and the surviving, no more than 300 puppets. And she was still thinking about the base, the puppets, or the Secluded Palace's disciples' dreams, were all gone. The base was destroyed. Secluded Palace had no more reinforcements. But Valley Wind City's reinforcements had arrived. Not only Dmo Xian and Yi Qingluo's return, they also brought along a large batch of Imperial Palace's disciples. Those Imperial Palace's disciples were imposing and imposing. One look and one knew that they were the Imperial Palace's outstanding disciples. Furthermore, Dmo Xian and Yi Qingluo's return. It gave the Valley Wind City's soldiers a huge boost in morale. The current situation was clear. Butterfly Saint Law's gorgeous eyes were sinister, and her distorted features made one horrified. Feng Ling. It was Feng Ling, that scoundrel. She should have taken precautions against Feng Ling. That scoundrel loved the overlord deeply. How would she possibly help secluded palace sincerely help them? All of this was Feng Ling's scoundrel plan. Butterfly Saint Law cursed Feng Ling hatefully in her heart. Yi Qingluo, who had been staring at Butterfly Saint Law, squinted her eyes. When he saw the resentment in the Butterfly Saint Technique's eyes, the corners of her lips curled up a little. As expected, the sacred butterfly technique was suspicious of Feng Ling. If that was the case, how could Windling stay in the Palace of Darkness? Heh, didn't Windchime like to scheme? This was the first gift she returned to him. Yi Qingluo's brows were still enchanting, but that enchanting did not reach her eyes. Retreat! Retreat! A chill rose in the heart of the Butterfly Saint Law. She clenched her fists and sternly ordered, "All evacuate Valley Wind City." The murderous aura lingered in the sky. The Butterfly Saint Technique only felt that her limbs were icy cold. She endured the rotten smell of the corpses, hid under the undead puppets, and quickly retreated. At this moment, the Dark Nether Palace disciples were also affected by the aura of the battlefield. As soon as he heard the Butterfly Saint Technique's command, one by one, they quickly retreated. Originally, how quickly they attacked the soldiers of Valley Wind City from the front and back. At this moment, they were retreating as fast as they could. However, Valley Wind City is not a place where your secluded palace can come and go as you please. The young lady's clear voice was pleasant to the ears. Just as they retreated a few steps back, the Imperial Palace's disciples surrounded the disciples of the Palace of Darkness, and the undead corpse puppets from all directions, blocking their escape route. Chapter 32-31. Yi Qingluo smiled sweetly, as her brows were curved into a smile. After all, I've taken advantage of you. This is the deal between me and South Continent, so since you've entered Valley Wind City, then don't even think of leaving. Butterfly Saint Technique's gaze swept across the surrounding Imperial Palace's disciples as her heart was filled with anger. In her imagination, she should have led her team to invade the South Waves continent and obtain this merit. Obviously, the one who was surrounded and trapped without any way to resist was Valley Wind City. Obviously, Nether Palace should be the one to win. Even the citizens of Valley Wind City had betrayed them. No, wrong. All these should have been borne by Elephant Saint Technique. Why was it that the one who had no way to resist had become her Butterfly Saint Technique? You Nether Palace had repeatedly targeted me and the people around me, so you deserve to die. Especially when you've hurt Shadow. Yi Qingluo slowly walked towards Butterfly Saint Technique. Her footsteps were light and slow, noble and elegant. The strong imposing manner that came charging towards her made it hard for Butterfly Saint Technique to breathe. Yi Qingluo's charming eyes met with Butterfly Saint Technique's eyes. Her long and narrow eyes were curved, and the corners of her mouth were raised into a smile. But Butterfly Saint Technique could clearly see the murderous intent in the depths of those sparkling eyes. Butterfly Saint Technique's heart suddenly trembled. An icy cold intent surged up from the bottom of her feet and spread to her limbs. She couldn't control herself as she started to tremble slightly. The pain that Shadow had suffered, the Imperial Palace's disciples' sacrifice, I want you to repay 100 times 4. The last 4 words. Yi Qingluo stared at Butterfly Saint Technique's eyes, word by word, squeezed out from the gaps of her teeth. Under this cold gaze, Butterfly Saint Technique felt a surge of fear rising from the bottom of her heart. An enormous pressure shrouded her body and mind. No. Not me. Your friend wasn't hurt by me, it's Elephant Saint Technique. Not me. Butterfly Saint Technique's voice trembled. The person who killed so many Imperial Palace's disciples is also Elephant Saint Technique's people. It has nothing to do with me, nothing to do with me. Yi Qingluo's lips curled upwards as her smile became even more enchanting. But you killed Elephant Saint Technique, so I can only seek revenge from you. The sacred Butterfly Technique shook her head vigorously. Even if you didn't hurt Shadow. But you already had the intention to give her a few stabs. Sony, you deserve to be punished. Yi Qingluo continued to smile as she spoke. The flowing light in her eyes was crafty and bright. During the conversation, Yi Qingluo was already 3 steps away from the butterfly saint technique. The butterfly saint technique could deeply feel the majestic aura that was released from Yi Qingluo, suppressing her heavily. From the moment you appeared here, you should bear the consequences. Yi Qingluo's lips curled into a teasing smile. The butterfly sacred technique's eyes widened. Under this extreme fear, the butterfly saint technique was like a broken jar. As she raised her palm and slammed it down towards Yi Qingluo's chest. Whoosh! This palm strike landed on thin air. The sacred butterfly technique's palm fiercely slapped the air. The aftershock of the strong profound energy caused a few more cracks to appear on the ground. The butterfly sacred technique's face paled, and she looked around nervously. She was afraid that the red figure would suddenly appear beside her. However, no matter how vigilant she wasn't able to see any remnant shadow of Yi Qingluo. Even when Yi Qingluo appeared beside her, she didn't notice it at all, until Yi Qingluo's silvery bell-like laughter was heard by her ear. The butterfly saint technique was then alarmed as she swiftly retreated to one side. This retreat. Chapter 32. Butterfly Saint Dharma was in so much pain that her entire body turned stiff. The robe on her chest was stained with blood. She turned her head sideways and discovered that the young lady who was laughing beside her earlier had unknowingly appeared behind her. The young lady's eyes were enchanting, her pink lips had a slight smile and her face was innocent and pure. But the action of her hands was totally incompatible with her expression. The young lady's hand moved slowly. Butterfly Saint Dharma felt that the wound on her back was as though it was cut open by a sharp weapon. Suddenly, the sharp blade was pulled away from her back. Fresh blood spurted out. She lost the strength to support herself. Butterfly Saint Dharma's body fell heavily onto the ground. A distorted face, so painful that her facial features could not be seen. Yi Qingluo shook the blood-stained dagger in her hand lightly. Yi Qingluo bent over and looked down at Butterfly Saint Dharma. This is the pain that the shadow is suffering. There are still 99 more stabs. Butterfly Saint Dharma was in so much pain that she almost fainted. But her consciousness was still clear. She could clearly feel the feeling of the sharp blade piercing through the flesh and bones. She could even hear the sound of the sharp blade entering the flesh and bones. 99 stabs. Payback 100 times? Did Yi Qingluo really want to stab her 100 times? Don't worry, within these 100 stabs, I will not let you die. Yi Qingluo kindly smiled. You should believe in my medical skills. Butterfly Saint Dharma's face was ashen. It would be better to just let her die. Yi Qingluo was still smiling, but the expression on her face turned solemn. Soldiers of Valley Wind City, Imperial Palace's disciples, the team leader who invaded Southern Continent has been captured. Next, it's your battlefield. Her voice was clear and ethereal, following the wind, resounding through every corner of the battlefield. The soldiers were burning with fighting intent. The battlefield, clashing and killing once again. But this time round, the situation had completely reversed. Secluded Palace's disciples, dead corpses and puppets were almost defeated. Grand General, please lock up this team leader. Later on I will take revenge. For the remaining 99 stabs. Yi Qingluo looked at the Grand General and smiled. The reversal of the situation made the usually dignified Grand General's eyes redden. He solemnly looked at Yi Qingluo as he clenched his fist tightly, replying in a sonorous and forceful voice. Imperial Madam, leave it to me. I'll definitely look after her for you. Yi Qingluo smiled without saying a word. As the general held the butterfly saint technique with one hand and walked towards the inn, the butterfly sacred law could clearly hear the young girl behind her. She said to the man beside her in a light tone. The people of Palace of Gloomy Darkness are really stupid. They really think they can rely on wind chime to make the people betray them and let them conquer the Southwaves continent. Are they questioning your attractiveness? The young woman smiled and continued. It's all thanks to Fengling that we were able to take care of the Palace of Darkness base and successfully take back the Southwater continent. The next time we meet, I'll have to thank her properly. Wind chimes, wind chimes. The butterfly saint technique roared this name in her heart. The great general carried the butterfly saint technique into the inn. Yi Qingluo then stopped her voice. Dmo Xian's eyes drooped as he gazed at the young lady who was hugging his arm as his lips curled up slightly. What are you scheming now? I'm returning wind chimes' gift. Yi Qingluo's eyes curved as her slender fingers poked Dmo Xian's chest fiercely. Why, feeling heartache? Dmo Xian's large palm wrapped around her fingers as his voice was calm but gentle. Yeah, heartache. Yi Qingluo's smile faded as her hands started to struggle. What a great Dmo Xian. You dare to feel heartache for another woman. Chapter 32-33. What's your heartache for? Yi Qingluo raised her brows as she crossed her arms and looked at Yi Qingluo, as though to express, I'll just quietly watch you continue to weave, see what kind of flowers you can weave. Dmo Xian's expression didn't change as he held up one of her hands. His thin lips curled into an intoxicating smile. Naturally, my heartache for you to spend so much effort just to return the gift. What a fellow. He actually wanted to use the beauty trap to seduce her. Heh. Did he really think that she, Yi Qingluo, was immune to his beauty? Yi Qingluo snorted as she arrogantly raised her chin. To deal with these two scums, why do I need to waste my brain? But I'll accept your heartache. Saying that, her slender fair fingers lifted Dmo Xian's chin as she tiptoed and pulled his body downwards, pressing her lips against his. She was indeed. Towards Dmo Xian's beauty trap, there was no way she was immune. Dmo Xian's beauty trap worked on her 100 times. The battle here has ended. Let's pack up and head over to East Continent to take a look at the situation. Yi Qingluo released his lips as her little hand encircled his neck from his chin, as she gave an enchanting smile. Dmo Xian's eyes were deep as his gaze hit a certain special emotion that was jumping. His gaze stared intensely at her pink lips. Yi Qingluo wasn't an ignorant young lady, so how would she not understand the meaning of Dmo Xian's gaze? That kiss was considered as igniting the fire. Yi Qingluo's smile became even more malicious. The biggest credit for South Continent to be able to be reclaimed is you. Although I really want to reward you, but the time and place isn't right, so I can't do anything about it. Dmo Xian's thin lips curled upwards as he suddenly bent over, hugging her waist as he carried her in his arms. Yi Qingluo was shocked as she hooked her arms around his neck. Dmo Xian carried her as they crossed the battlefield, which was filled with blood, past the surrounding soldiers and disciples who were still entangled with each other. Just like the both of them didn't belong to this battlefield, didn't belong here. And the surrounding people who were entangled with each other also completely didn't dare to go near them. Just like that, they allowed Dmo Xian to carry Yi Qingluo as they walked towards the direction of the inn. But everyone only saw such a scene that was full of pretentiousness. But Yi Qingluo was nestled in Dmo Xian's arms with her face flushed red. There were several times when she gritted her teeth and wanted to punch his chest with her fist. She really wanted to grab Dmo Xian's lapel and tell him those onlookers who thought that the scene of the overlord carrying her away from the battlefield was very cool. All of you have been deceived by him. She was deceived by his invisible aura of pretentiousness. What do you mean by acting cool? He was a F*** bully, okay? At the same time, Dmo Xian carried her up. Then he softly whispered something into her ear. If there's no problem with the time and place, are you at my disposal? That voice had a deliberately seductive magnetism. The teasing Yi Qingluo almost couldn't control herself. My boyfriend is too much of a beast. He wants to push me down all the time. What should I do? I'm waiting online, it's urgent. There was no suspense in this war. Secluded Palace's disciples were all captured. The corpses and puppets were all killed by the Imperial Palace's disciples, Devil Class and other youngsters. The soldiers used those special weapons to kill all of them. Whereas after the battle in Valley Wind City ended, under Yi Qingluo's reminder, the Grand General. Chapter 32-34. In less than 3 days, the southern wave continent returned to its former tranquility. All over the South Billow continent, The people who were still alive walked out of the darkness and saw the sun again. This was because the monarch of the South Waves continent had fled the South Waves continent before the Nether Palace had conquered the South Waves continent. This caused countless noble clans to look down on the Southern Wave continent's royal family and insult them. Therefore, the sect master of the Gufeng sect, Gu Ming, temporarily took over the responsibilities of the imperial family and reorganized the Southern Water continent. Gu Ming was in this battle. In the South Billow continent, it was deeply rooted in the hearts of the people. He would take charge of the overall situation. No one disagreed. Things were settled just like that. They gathered in the afternoon 3 days later. Yi Qingluo and the others were already prepared to leave South Tide continent. The general hurried over, his face full of guilt. Lord Overlord, Madam Emperor. Oh no, Darkness Palace. Darkness Palace's team leader, the great general, who was always dignified and straightforward, was now stuttering and unable to form a complete sentence. She ran away, right? Yi Qingluo smiled as she said what the great general didn't finish his sentence. The general was startled and immediately lowered his head in guilt. I'm sorry. It's my fault. He pursed his lips tightly as he suddenly knelt down towards Yi Qingluo. May Madam punish me? No need. Yi Qingluo waved her hand as she helped him up. So be it. But this is a captive that Madame D worked hard to capture. The general clenched his fists. The captives he had been guarding had escaped from him. To him, this was a fatal blow. Not only had he let down Yi Qingluo's trust, he would also feel sorry for his armor. Moreover, he had let down his duty as the great general. It's all right. You don't have to feel guilty. Yi Qingluo smiled warmly at the Grand General. If I don't want her to leave Valleywind City, do you think she can escape? The general's pupils dilated little by little. The meaning of these words was, did the Emperor Madam let the leader of the Palace of Darkness go on purpose? Yi Qingluo's eyes were filled with smiles as she nodded calmly. Why? The general could not understand. Yi Qingluo's pink lips rose as she gave a crafty smile. She's already a dying person. How can we let her die so easily? Naturally. It's to make her do something valuable before she dies. Looking at Yi Qingluo's confident and flamboyant, smiling face, the anxiety in the great general's heart gradually calmed down. Looks like everything was under the lady's control. It was no wonder that after the leader of the team from Abyss Palace was locked up, the Lady Monarch didn't say anything about the interrogation of the leader of the Palace of Darkness team, or the results. He just locked up the team leader of the Dark Nether Palace here, just so that the leader of the Palace of Gloomy Darkness could escape from Valleywind City. However, the general did not understand what the lady meant by final value. But he trusted the Imperial Lady. As long as Deforan decided, there was absolutely no deviation. South Continent's matter has been settled and Palace of Darkness has suffered a heavy loss. I've left a batch of weapons to deal with the undead puppets for you. Palace of Darkness. For a short period of time, they will absolutely not dare to find trouble with South Continent. Yi Qingluo patted the great general's shoulder. Chapter 32-35. MN. Yi Qingluo smiled. I stayed in South Continent because of the deal with Sect Master Gu. Now that the deal has been completed, it's time for us to leave. The Grand General's lips moved. A burly man didn't know how to speak. In his heart, he didn't wish for Yi Qingluo and the rest to leave. But Yi Qingluo's words were indeed reasonable. After some time, he pursed his lips. When does Imperial Madam intend to leave? Should be latest by tomorrow. Yi Qingluo's smile grew, giving off an unfathomable feeling. Not knowing why, the Grand General felt that Yi Qingluo's words contained some sort of message. That unfathomable tone. As though everything was within her grasp. Imperial Madam, may I explain this matter to Sect Master Gu? The Grand General cupped his fists and inquired respectfully. Imperial Madam is the savior of South Continent. Sect Master Gu must want to send Imperial Madam off personally. Yi Qingluo nodded. We are leaving. Naturally we should inform the Master of South Continent. Night. Yi Qingluo and the rest under the Grand General's lead arrived at the royal palace in South Continent. In the reception hall, there were many exquisite delicacies. Although it was exquisite, but because South Continent had yet to regain its original richness, the ingredients were actually very simple. But one could tell, Gu Ming had put in a lot of effort. Gu Ming had already heard about Yi Qingluo and the rest leaving. He didn't stop Yi Qingluo and the rest from leaving, but respectfully and gratefully thanked everyone, and stood up, toasting everyone a cup of wine. Gu Ming tactfully struck up a conversation with the Grand General from time to time. This parting banquet was rather comfortable. But, just as the banquet was about to end, a guard hurried over and whispered something into Gu Ming's ear. Gu Ming's expression instantly darkened. Yi Qingluo acutely sensed that Gu Ming's gaze was on her, taking a look. Yi Qingluo raised her brows. In her heart, she was clear what had happened. Moments later, Gu Ming waved the guard away, looking at Yi Qingluo awkwardly. "Imperial Madam, I have something I want to discuss with you." Yi Qingluo put down the wine glass in her hand. Her long and narrow eyes raised upwards. That smile, which didn't look like a smile, was even more mysterious and unfathomable. Even Gu Ming, who had been in a high position for a long time, could not help but feel pressured. "Let me guess." Yi Qingluo opened her mouth with a light smile. Her voice was clear and calm. "Could it be that monarch from East Continent has come to visit?" Gu Ming was surprised. "Madam, did you hear it?" Yi Qingluo smiled sweetly and shook her head. "I guessed." Gu Ming's heart was filled with even more admiration towards Yi Qingluo. Since Yi Qingluo had already guessed it, he didn't mince his words. "It's indeed the East Tide monarch who paid a visit, I'm afraid. He's here to seek your help regarding the East Tide continent, if you're not willing to meet him." "Why not?" Yi Qingluo smiled as her brows rose. "We originally intended to head towards the East Continent. Since the East Continent monarch is here, I'd like to ask the East Continent monarch to take care of us in the East Continent." When Gu Ming heard that, he didn't think too much about what Yi Qingluo's pleasant words meant. He was afraid that Yi Qingluo would refuse to meet the East Tide monarch because of her relationship with Jade Dome Sect's sect master. In this way, he was stuck in the middle, not knowing what to do. Chapter 32-36. But what Gu Ming didn't expect was, it wasn't only East Wave Monarch who came, and Jade Sky Sect's sect master Hao Nanren. Hao Nanren's face darkened, and that plump face was filled with unwillingness. East Wave Monarch was walking in front with a friendly smile as he walked in quickly and cupped his fists towards Gu Ming intimately. "Brother Gu, long time no see. Congratulations, Brother Gu, for protecting the South Wave continent." Gu Ming's gaze was fixed on Hao Nanren, who was standing behind East Wave Monarch with an unfriendly expression as his lips twitched stiffly. "Protecting the South Wave continent is not my credit. I know." In this hall filled with servants, East Wave Monarch didn't address himself as emperor, as he placed his status very low. "And Miss Yi and the World Mercenary Group." He accurately cupped his fists towards Yi Qingluo's direction. His vision, when it met Yi Qingluo's side, on that indolent, peerless man, his expression congealed instantly. Following that, it was a subconscious action. East Wave Monarch knelt down. This action startled Hao Nanren, who had a sullen expression on his face. He looked towards the direction where East Wave Monarch knelt down. His vision was fixed on Yi Qingluo. By right, with DMO Xian's existence, basically no one would be able to ignore him. But unfortunately, Hao Nanren had suffered the first humiliation in his life in Yi Qingluo's hands. Towards Yi Qingluo, he hated her to the extreme. Especially today, he was forcefully dragged by East Wave Monarch to apologize to her. Hao Nanren's heart was originally filled with rebellion and unwillingness. Now that he saw Yi Qingluo's face, and because East Wave Monarch didn't care about his face and lowered himself to kneel down, it made the dissatisfaction in his heart completely burst out. "Monarch, why are you kneeling down to that slut? Didn't I say that it was Sect Master Gu's credit to chase those people from secluded palace out of South Wave continent? What has it got to do with that slut? She's just a young lady. How can she overturn the heavens? Don't try any doctor in a desperate situation. Don't forget your identity. You represent the entire East Wave continent. Hao Nanren's words were filled with sincerity. Then he looked at the East Wave sovereign with an extremely disappointed expression. His words nearly caused the East Wave sovereign to faint. He knelt on the ground and did not dare to raise his head. He tugged at Hao Nanren's sleeve and shouted in a low voice, "Shut up and kneel down." Monarch. Hao Nanren was enraged as well. Do you want to bring shame to the entire East continent? Sect master of the Jade Dome sect. Gu Ming, who was sitting on the high seat, couldn't bear listening to these words. If you continue to speak rudely, my South Tide continent will not welcome you. Hao Nanren's face was gloomy, and a gust of cold wind shot out from his eyes that were almost invisible on his chubby face. If the East Wave sovereign hadn't forced him to come to the South Wave continent, did Gu Ming really think that he wanted to come? So what if the Southern Wave's continent was taken back from the hands of the Netherworld Palace? He had experienced a war. The South Tide continent was no longer the same as before. If he was the East Wave sovereign, he would definitely lead his army to occupy the South Wave continent without a second word. In Hao Nanren's eyes, the current South Billow continent was not even worth mentioning. The East Wave sovereign actually had to lower himself? How could he put his own status so low? Chapter 32-37. Hao Nanren's words were indeed arrogant. The East Wave sovereign, who was kneeling on the ground, broke out in cold sweat. The East Wave sovereign was well aware of Hao Nanren's temperament. Because of this, the last time when Hao Nanren wanted to personally discuss the deal with Yi Qing Luo, she specially promised Hao Nanren half of the benefits of the kingdom. But unexpectedly, however, Hao Nanren still returned empty-handed. Although from Hao Nanren's mouth he had pushed all the blame onto Yi Qing Luo. However, the East Wave sovereign was no fool. He was well aware of Hao Nanren's temperament. He also knew that it was Hao Nanren's fault that the two sides didn't come to an agreement last time. Later on, the South Wave's continent was attacked by the Dark Nether Palace. East Wave monarch was more or less interested to test if Yi Qing Luo and the others were really able to deal with the Palace of Gloomy Darkness and defend the South Wave continent. Then, after the war on the South Billow continent ended, without stopping, he rushed over with Hao Nanren. In East Wave's monarch's heart, Yi Qing Luo and the others' abilities were obvious to all. However, Hao Nanren couldn't see the situation clearly, and was still putting on airs. East Wave monarch was so infuriated that he couldn't wait to strangle Hao Nanren. He retrieved the Azure Dragon Pearl from his body, and presented it to Yi Qing Luo with both hands. The East Wave sovereign racked his brains to think of a way to explain Hao Nanren's arrogant words. Gu Ming, who was sitting on the high seat, had already heavily slammed the table and sneered. Good. Good. Since that's what the sect leader of the Jade Dome sect thinks of me, then I'll wait for the good news here. This sect master wants to see just how you are going to take down the South Billow continent. Make the South Tide continent your world. Gu Ming spat out each word through gritted teeth. This wasn't because he was relying on the presence of Dmo Xian and Yi Qing Luo, hence he dared to say these words. This was the courage of their South Tide continent. Just because the South Billow continent was damaged, it didn't mean that it could be bullied by other continents. If the South Billow continent could really be so easily humiliated by others, the South Billow continent wouldn't have lasted until now. If Hao Nan really wanted to fight this battle, I, Gu Ming, will accompany you to the end. Hao Nanren originally thought that his words would definitely scare Gu Ming so much that his face would turn pale, and he would soften his tone and beg for mercy. However, he did not expect that Gu Ming would actually dare to accept his challenge. You really won't shed a tear until you see the coffin. I'll fulfill your wish. Hao Nanren clenched his fists, his eyes filled with murderous intent. He strode out of the hall and continued arrogantly. Gu Ming, after I conquer the South Continent, I will hang your corpse on the city gate for 3 days and 3 nights. Gu Ming gripped the seat tightly. His knuckles tightened and his fingertips turned white. He was suppressing his anger. Just as Hao Nanren was about to walk out of the hall, a lazy and cold voice suddenly sounded in the hall. There was a hint of amusement in the voice. Sect Master of the Jade Dome Sect. You want to make the South Billow continent your world? Have you asked me? His voice was so light that there was not a hint of emotion in it. But however, it caused a chill to run down one's spine. How Nanren's footsteps halted as he turned his head back abruptly. No matter how arrogant he was, the expression on his face had turned slightly grave. His vision followed the direction of the voice and looked towards Yiqing Luo, that purple-robed man beside her. His expression suddenly turned pale. How Nanren was stunned on the spot. Until East Billow Monarch bellowed in exasperation, "Scoundrel, hurry and kneel down." How Nanren then regained his senses. Chapter 32-38. His fat body was like a pile of meat. How Nanren finally understood. Why did East Billow Monarch kneel down towards Yiqing Luo the minute he entered? The person who East Billow Monarch was kneeling towards wasn't Yiqing Luo, but the person beside her. The Overlord. Beside her? No, wait a minute. Why was the Overlord sitting beside Yiqing Luo? What was the relationship between them? How Nanren's intuition told him that he had missed out on some important information. However, the clear and melodious voice that floated over his head had already clearly indicated what exactly he had missed. Jade Dome Sect's sovereign's tone is really arrogant. The young lady giggled, but her tone was filled with ridicule. Even my Axian isn't as arrogant as Jade Dome Sect's sovereign. My Axian? My. These two words kept replaying in How Nanren's mind. He raised his head abruptly. His eyes stared intently at Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian. He saw the young lady smiling sweetly as she snuggled into the man's arms. Whereas that noble and elegant overlord lowered his eyes as he gazed at the young lady as he gave an indulgent smile. That gaze was so gentle that water could be squeezed out. What kind of indulgence was this? How Nanren broke out in cold sweat. Yiqing Luo's eyes curved as she met How Nanren's gaze as she smiled evilly. In this case, Sect Master Gu and I will wait for Jade Dome Sect's arrival. Axian and I would like to see with our own eyes how Jade Dome Sect's sovereign will turn South Tide Continent into How Nanren's world under our eyes. Yiqing Luo's voice was very soft and slow. It was as if they were discussing something extremely ordinary. How Nanren was sweating profusely when he heard that. East Billow Monarch immediately spoke. Overlord, Madam Emperor. Please be angry, please be angry. He's just anxious. Anxious? Yiqing Luo sneered. From what I see, he has the intention to replace me. One must know that, before the battle, Jade Dome Sect's sovereign was even more arrogant in front of me than today. East Billow Monarch was trembling in fear. Madam Emperor, even if he really has this intention, our East Billow royal family will absolutely not allow him to do this. Yiqing Luo tilted her head as her pink lips curled upwards, appearing to be filled with ridicule. I naturally believe in East Wave Monarch's heart. Yiqing Luo gave a faint smile, but Jade Dome Sect's sect master. She stood up, her red dress billowing like raging flames, pouring down in torrents. She slowly walked towards the kneeling East Wave sovereign and How Nanren. One step a lotus. Every step she took, the East Wave sovereign and How Nanren felt their hearts skip a beat. Moments later, Yiqing Luo stood in front of the both of them. She bent down and helped the East Wave sovereign to his feet with a smile. The sleeves of the East Wave sovereign were drenched in sweat. Yiqing Luo's face didn't reveal any trace of disgust or disgust as she continued smiling at the apprehensive East Wave's monarch. East Wave's monarch's heart is for the common people, I understand. The East Wave sovereign shuddered. After helping the East Wave sovereign up, Yiqing Luo's vision fell onto How Nanren. Does Jade Dome Sect's sovereign know the reason why the East Wave sovereign specially came to the South Wave's continent to look for me? How Nanren's voice trembled as he replied hesitantly. Yes, it's because the forces of the secluded Darkness Palace have already invaded East Wave's continent. Chapter 32-39. Say consequences. How Nanren repeated these two words with a trembling voice. I believe that secluded Darkness Palace hopes to see the two continents fighting against each other. Hearing Hao Nanren's obvious tone of not knowing what he did wrong, Yiqing Luo's voice turned chilly. Jade Dome Sect's sect master has ever thought that after your two sects kill each other and suffer heavy losses, Secluded Darkness Palace will reap the benefits. What will happen to the commoners of East Tide Continent? When Hao Nanren heard that, the fats on his body shook violently as he raised his head with a ghastly pale face. Yiqing Luo sneered. Of course, Jade Dome Sect's sect master will definitely not bother about what will happen to those commoners. By then, Jade Dome Sect's sect master only needs to beg for mercy from Secluded Darkness Palace, and bring Jade Dome Sect to side with Secluded Darkness Palace to protect his own life. These words were filled with ridicule. Hao Nanren's pale face suddenly flushed red. Whether he was angry or embarrassed, no one knew. Madam Emperor, no matter what sect master Hao does, he will definitely not side with Secluded Darkness Palace. East Tide Monarch saw that Hao Nanren didn't express his loyalty for a long time as he immediately helped. This time, Sect Master Hao even brought the Azure Dragon Pearl personally to show his sincerity. Yiqing Luo glanced sideways at East Tide Monarch, and the chilliness in her eyes made East Tide Monarch feel apprehensive. Her pink lips curled up as she gave a ridiculing smile as she spoke in an extremely indifferent tone. I didn't see sincerity, but I saw Jade Dome Sect's sect master's ambition. This gaze, this tone. It was very obvious that it was sending some kind of message to East Tide Monarch. East Tide Monarch wanted to say something, but he forcefully swallowed it back. Yiqing Luo was warning him. If he spoke up for Hao Nanren again, probably Yiqing Luo would not give him any face. She might even classify him and Hao Nanren as the same kind of people. East Tide Monarch personally paid a visit to seek help from Yiqing Luo was naturally because of his utmost trust towards Yiqing Luo's ability. As for Hao Nanren, he only had a bargaining chip which he could use to persuade Yiqing Luo. East Tide Monarch naturally wouldn't take the risk of offending Yiqing Luo to speak up for Hao Nanren. The East Wave Sovereign was no longer there to smooth things over. Kneeling on the ground, Hao Nanren's entire body trembled as his smile widened. Empress, this time, I really came with sincerity. This is the Green Dragon Pearl. With the reminder from the East Wave Sovereign, Lin Feng was no longer able to control himself. Hao Nanren quickly took out the Azure Dragon Pearl and held it above his head. This is the Azure Dragon Pearl that the Jade Dome Sect has been guarding for generations. I present this Azure Dragon Pearl to Lady Emperor on behalf of the Jade Dome Sect. Please accept it. However, in Hao Nanren's imagination, the scene of him taking out the Azure Dragon Pearl and Yiqing Luo beaming with joy didn't appear at all. Just like that, he maintained the posture of holding the Azure Dragon Pearl up high for about the time it took for half an incense stick to burn. His hands were a little numb from holding them up. Hao Nanren was annoyed and embarrassed. Suppressing the unhappiness in his heart, he slowly raised his head and secretly looked at Yiqing Luo. The girl was leaning lazily in Dizun's arms. Her long and narrow eyes seemed to be outlining the most dazzling colors in the world. The expression on the girl's face was indifferent and lazy. She didn't even take a glance at the Azure Dragon Pearl in his hands from the corner of her eyes. He had been yearning for it, treating it as a family heirloom which could save his life. But in Yiqing Luo's eyes, it seemed to be a piece of abandoned stone. Hao Nanren's heart, which was filled with hope, started to sink down bit by bit. Chapter 3240. The East Wave Sovereign, who had been standing to the side and had not dared to speak for a long time, was also taken aback. Didn't Imperial Madam want the Azure Dragon Pearl? What? But now she was dismissive towards the Azure Dragon Pearl? Could it be that Imperial Madam didn't need the Azure Dragon Pearl anymore? East Wave's monarch was feeling apprehensive. His gaze couldn't help but look towards Gu Ming's direction, inquiring for the reason. The only way to convince Yiqing Luo to help East Wave's continent was the Azure Dragon Pearl. If Yiqing Luo had no interest in the Azure Dragon Pearl, then what would happen to East Wave's continent? Gu Ming was also in a daze. The entire main hall was silent. No one dared to open their mouths to break this stalemate. They were afraid that if they opened their mouths, Yiqing Luo would think that they wanted to help Hao Nanren. Everyone could see that. Yiqing Luo didn't like Jade Dome Sect's sovereign. Yi Qingluo didn't like it, which meant that the overlord didn't like it. If the overlord didn't like it, then it meant that the imperial palace didn't like it. Who dared to offend the imperial palace? Offend the overlord? Hao Nanren maintained his kneeling position, and the action of raising the azure dragon pearl had already made his arms sore and his entire body numb. His fat body was sweating profusely, soaking the ground he was kneeling on. Beads of sweat dripped down drop by drop. He had never suffered such grievance before. Towards Yi Qingluo, Hao Nanren had always looked down on her from the bottom of his heart. His respect, his willingness to kneel down, was all because of the overlord. But Yi Qingluo was merely using her looks, relying on the fact that she had the backing of the overlord, which was why she dared to be arrogant in front of him. Did Yi Qingluo really think that defending Southwave's continent was her credit? The disdain in his heart, under Yi Qingluo's ridiculing gaze, it swiftly took root in his heart. He was extremely furious as the palm which was holding the azure dragon pearl clenched tightly. He straightened his body and raised his head. This extremely unyielding action looked extremely comical in Hao Nanren's eyes. He had knelt for too long, raised it for too long. His entire body was stiff and numb. In addition, his entire body was trembling like a ball of meat. If he suddenly straightened his body would not be able to withstand such pressure. His whole body went limp on the ground. The surroundings were filled with suppressed laughter. Angrily, Hao Nanren hammered the ground and glared around, trying to find out who was laughing at him. Even if he had to hold back his laughter, that was not allowed either. Ha ha ha. Suddenly, a burst of light and sweet-sounding laughter resounded in the air above the hall like silver bells. That laughter was like pearls falling onto a plate, extremely clear and melodious. I didn't expect the sect master of the Jade Dome sect to like sticking his face to the ground so much. The laughter continued, full of mockery. In that case, I'll be merciful and allow you to lie there before the banquet ends. These words. In the end, the soldiers sitting below could not help but laugh out loud. Even the well-trained servants who were serving him by the side laughed out loud. Hao Nanren's face was burning hot, and the suppressed anger in his heart gushed out in shame and embarrassment. He hammered the ground fiercely as he struggled to climb up from the ground and stared furiously at Yi Qingluo. Are you kidding me? You never thought of helping the East Wave continent. You did it on purpose. He hissed angrily as the fats on his body kept on vibrating along with his emotions. Hao Nanren's eyes seemed as though it was spitting fire, as the fury scorched his heart. Yi Qingluo, don't think that just because you have the support of the overlord, you can do whatever you want. Suddenly, a deep voice rang. Chapter 3241. Just as Hao Nanren finished his sentence, a voice suddenly rang out. Following that was a deep voice, Jade Dome Sect's sect master. That voice was low and deep, without any fluctuation of emotions. But it made the entire main hall quieten down. Everyone's breathing became careful, not daring to make any sound. Hao Nanren's anger was also poured into his heart by this voice. He stood there in a daze, as his pair of slits-like eyes kept widening. This lord's woman naturally has the right to do whatever she wants. The man's features were calm and expressionless. His gaze was deep as he looked at Hao Nanren indifferently. Does Jade Dome Sect's sect master have any objections? Saying that, his thin lips pursed slightly, as his deep gaze was cold and indifferent. Everyone felt that the air in the main hall was so cold that it made them shiver. This aura, which was like an endless abyss, pressed down on Hao Nanren. Hao Nanren only felt an uncontrollable fear rising from the depths of his soul. His legs turned into jelly as he slumped onto the ground without any face. Objections? What objections did he dare to have? He was only unresigned. His disheveled state had become a joke in everyone's eyes. However, that young lady who agitated him, who made him so angry that he lost his rationality, still had a radiant smile on her face, like a beautiful flower blooming, as though she felt that she hadn't sprinkled enough salt on Hao Nanren. Yi Qingluo's petite body fell into Di Emotien's arms as she opened her arms, hugging onto Di Emotien's lean waist. Following that, she gave an evil smile. That's right, I'm just relying on my Xian's support to do whatever I want. What can you do to me? These were provocative words. It made Hao Nanren's eyes turn red. In Hao Nanren's eyes, Yi Qingluo's daring act of throwing herself into his arms was called shameless. Yi Qingluo seemed to see through his anger as she suddenly hooked onto Dmo Xian's neck and planted a kiss on his face. Following that, she looked at Hao Nanren with a smile. I like it when you're annoyed by me, but you can't do anything to me. A mouthful of blood spurted out of Hao Nanren's mouth due to his anger. In the blood, there were pieces of red meat. That was their flesh and blood. Obviously, Hao Nanren was furious. Faction leader Hao, the Eastwater continent is about to face a calamity. This is not the time for you to act on impulse. Don't forget the reason why you followed us to the South Tide continent. The monarch of the East Tide saw that Hao Nanren was still stubbornly refusing to come to his senses. Hao Nanren put his hand on his chest and gasped for breath. His voice was weak and trembling. How did I act on impulse? She wanted the Azure Dragon Pearl. I gave it to her, but she didn't want it. She wants to go back on her word. The Lord of the East Billow opened his mouth, but found himself unable to refute. The Azure Dragon Pearl was indeed something that Yi Qingluo disdained. This was the truth. But East Wave Monarch took a look at Yi Qingluo and stood on Yi Qingluo's side. Since you're here to ask for help, then you should have the attitude of asking for help. If I were you, I wouldn't want to cooperate with you either. Hao Nanren was so angry that his face turned green. Poochie. Right at this moment, a chuckle broke the stalemate. East Wave Monarch and Hao Nanren's vision followed the laughter, and looked towards Yi Qingluo. Not knowing when, the young lady had already stood up from her seat. A blazing red robe made one dazzled. A pair of long and narrow eyes made one sink into it. That devastatingly beautiful face was matchless. Chapter 3242. Under this enchanting elegance. Everyone felt a chill in their hearts. Who would have the mood to pay attention to Yi Qingluo's alluring looks? Hao Nanren subconsciously took a step back as his eyes widened in terror. You, what are you trying to do? Yi Qingluo's pink lips curled upwards as her pair of fiery eyes fell onto him. The young lady's face was filled with ridicule and ridicule. Jade Dome Sect Master, you took a fake Azure Dragon Pearl in front of me. Are you treating Xian and me as fools? The young lady's voice was clear, but her tone was filled with frost. Fake? Fake Azure Dragon Pearl? These few words made East Wave Monarch's face turn pale instantly. Hao Nanren was also shocked as he forced himself to remain calm as he stared at Yi Qingluo. You, what nonsense are you sprouting? This is my Jade Dome Sect's ancestral treasure Azure Dragon Pearl. How could it be fake? Jade Dome Sect's sect master treats all of us as fools? Yi Qingluo laughed lightly as her eyes were filled with ridicule. Hao Nanren took a few steps back in terror. I didn't. It's true. Throw him out. Yi Qingluo calmly interrupted his rebuttal as her voice was cold. Hao Nanren's rebuttal stopped instantly. Stay here. If the Overlord wanted to stand up for his woman, he might not be able to leave Southwave Continent today. But if Yi Qingluo asked someone to throw him out, at least he would be able to keep his life. Hao Nanren didn't even resist. He was directly carried up by the Imperial Palace's disciple who took orders from Yi Qingluo and dragged him out of the main hall. Yi Qingluo sat down once again. Her pair of curved eyes squinted as she stared at Hao Nanren's figure, which was being carried out as her lips curled into an evil smile. She didn't kill Hao Nanren not because she was soft-hearted or because she was a saint or something. It was because she couldn't destroy the balance between the 4 continents in Nirvana realm. The rumors about the 4 great sects might not be fake. If the 4 great sects were really the guardians of the God Emperor's tomb, in that case, the chosen sect master would be the one chosen by the God Emperor. She killed Hao Nanren. If he couldn't find the next sect master of the Jade Dome sect who had the Divine Emperor's imprint, the balance of the Jade Dome sect would be destroyed. What would happen to the tomb of the Divine Emperor without a guard? All of this was unknown. Of course, it wasn't easy to let Hao Nanren go. They agreed to throw Hao Nanren out. That was to really throw it out. Even if Hao Nanren managed to keep his life, his reputation as the so-called sect master of the Jade Dome sect. It would also be completely destroyed. At this moment, the East Wave sovereign watched as Hao Nanren was dragged out. His face was pale and his arms drooped to his sides. This was not because he was afraid that Yi Qing Luo would vent her anger on him. Instead, he was worried about the future of the East Wave continent. Yi Qing Luo's vision slowly fell onto the East Wave monarch, sovereign of the East Wave. She opened her mouth and her voice was indifferent. East Wave's monarch slowly regained his senses as he looked at Yi Qing Luo. His lips moved, but in the end he lowered his eyelids. Foreign. When are you preparing to set off? Yi Qing Luo continued to ask. Depart? The East Wave monarch still hadn't reacted in time. The young lady's clear voice rang once again. Based on the secluded Darkness Palace's temperament, after suffering a setback in the South Wave continent, I estimate that they will return to the East Wave continent within these few days. The East Wave monarch looked at Yi Qing Luo in a daze, not understanding the meaning behind her words. Looking at the dazed expression on the East Wave monarch, Yi Qing Luo laughed softly. So it's best that we set off tomorrow morning. Star. Chapter 3243. Us. Set off. East Wave monarch's eyes were filled with bewilderment. He had always been intelligent, but at this moment, his mind was completely blank. Perhaps he had a vague guess in his heart, but he didn't dare to have that kind of hope. Because of that, his mind was in a daze. Yi Qing Luo stared at East Wave monarch's dazed eyes as she smiled. Right, us. Hearing Yi Qing Luo spitting out these three words clearly from her mouth, East Wave monarch's eyes lit up as he was overwhelmed with emotions. Madam, you mean? You're willing to head to East Wave continent with me, you're willing to help East Wave continent to deal with secluded palace? As East Wave monarch asked, the palm which was pressed on his chest tightened. His stomach was filled with apprehension and anxiety. Amen. Yi Qing Luo smiled as she gave East Wave monarch his final affirmation. East Wave monarch's anxious expression suddenly relaxed. The rims of his eyes were almost red. The hand that was pressing on his chest had wrinkled the front of his shirt. He was touched and excited. He totally didn't care about his own status, and didn't care about who was around them. He faced Yi Qing Luo and knelt down heavily. Last time, East Wave monarch knelt down to Yi Qing Luo. That was in private. This was enough to make Yi Qing Luo moved. But today, East Wave monarch knelt down to express his gratitude in front of everyone. This made Yi Qing Luo even more determined to help East Wave continent. Sometimes, lowering one's head didn't mean one was weak. But for the things he protected, the people he protected, the sincerity he gave, to be able to make a country's monarch, in another foreign continent, in front of another continent's people, to sincerely kneel down to express his gratitude. It was enough to show how much this country's monarch valued his own continent, and how much he valued his own people. East Wave monarch, you don't have to be so courteous. Yi Qing Luo's sleeves fluttered as she supported East Tide monarch up. After this battle in South Tide continent, secluded Darkness Palace will definitely come up with corresponding countermeasures. Even if I agree to help East Tide continent, but that doesn't mean that I can really help you defend East Tide continent. The East Wave monarch smiled gratefully and shook his head. Your willingness to lend a hand is the greatest help to the East Wave continent. No matter what the outcome is, the Empress, the Emperor, the World Mercenary Group, will always be the people I will be grateful to. Yi Qing Luo smiled and changed the topic. But I have a small request. Just say the word, Lady Emperor. As long as it's within my power, I'll do anything for you. The East Wave sovereign said resolutely. Yi Qing Luo's long and narrow eyes squinted slightly as she gave an evil smile. I will support East Tide continent to the end, but I hope that East Tide continent will be able to do it. No matter if secluded Darkness Palace takes action against Jade Dome sect or whatever, no one from East Tide continent is allowed to help. The East Wave monarch was taken aback. I understand. One more thing. If the East Wave monarch knows who Jade Dome sect's young sect master is, Please secretly bring Jade Dome Sect's young sect master to your side. Yi Qing Luo continued. If Hao Nanren dies, then it'll be troublesome. The East Wave Monarch will assist that young sect master to inherit the position of Jade Dome Sect Master. This request made the East Wave Monarch completely stunned. Yi Qing Luo didn't urge him to reply immediately. Chapter 3244. Someone like Hao Nanren was like this. If he didn't die, he would definitely become an annoying fly. Furthermore, it was a very disgusting kind of fly. Therefore, while killing Hao Nanren, he would ensure that the next successor with the Jade Dome Sect's Divine Emperor's mark would inherit the Jade Dome Sect. The balance of the East Continent was stabilized. I understand. East Billow Monarch remained silent for a moment before he finally cupped his fists and spoke to Yi Qing Luo solemnly. I will definitely fulfill the 2 requests that Imperial Madam has mentioned. Yi Qing Luo picked up a cup of wine on the table and raised it towards the East Wave's Monarch as she smiled. East Wave's Monarch, it's a pleasure working with you. In a daze, the East Wave Sovereign accepted the cup of wine handed to him by a maidservant beside him. It's a pleasure working with you. The atmosphere of a banquet was restored in the main hall. It was as if the scene that was disturbed by Hao Nanren just now had never happened. On the high seat, Gu Ming secretly suppressed the chill on his back and heaved a sigh of relief. After Yi Qing Luo raised her request, subconsciously, a picture emerged in Gu Ming's mind. The smile on the young girl's face was cold, as if everything was under her control. I will wait for him to offer up the Azure Dragon Pearl with both hands and cry for me to save him. His entire body trembled. He believed it with all his heart. In the coming days, Hao Nanren would definitely offer up the Azure Dragon Pearl with both hands and cry for Madame D to save him. Fortunately, from the very beginning he had chosen to believe in this girl who could bring miracles to everyone. This might be the legendary. A single thought, a single choice, would determine the true meaning of life. Gu Ming's heart was in turmoil. At this moment, the great general's heart was also very complicated. In his eyes, Yi Qing Luo was already a godlike existence. He still remembered in the morning when he asked Yi Qing Luo when she was planning to leave South Tide Continent. Yi Qing Luo's smile was unfathomable and mysterious. She said, tomorrow at the latest. That very night, the East Wave Sovereign and Hao Nanren arrived. He finally understood the deep meaning behind Yi Qing Luo's smile at that time. In other words, Yi Qing Luo knew right from the start. The East Wave Sovereign would rush over to the South Wave Continent and ask for her help again. From the very beginning, she had planned to help the East Wave Continent. In Great General's mind, all the things that Yi Qing Luo had done in South Tide Continent surfaced in this period of time. The more he thought about it, the Great General had become Yi Qing Luo's diehard fan. In the past, towards Yi Qing Luo, his respect and trust was more or less related to the Overlord. But now he firmly believed, even without Dizun, this girl was full of hope and miracles. He would definitely be able to defend the South Wave's continent. The farewell banquet ended. Yi Qing Luo held on to Dmo Xian's arm as they brought their brothers back to the inn. Tomorrow, they would be leaving the South Tide Continent. The brothers returned to their rooms to pack their things. Yi Qing Luo pulled Dmo Xian along as they headed towards a room at the corner of the second floor. This was Mo Yuying's room. In the battle 3 days ago, Mo Yuying was injured by Xiang Shengfei's dagger. Mo Yuying's consciousness had been alternating between being awake and unconscious. Yi Qing Luo took Mo Yuying's pulse, but was unable to find out the reason why Mo Yuying had fallen into a coma. Even Dmo Xian had no idea about Mo Yuying's condition. However, after Mo Yuying fainted, her expressionless face, which was like that of a soulless puppet, became a little more expressionless. Chapter 3245. When Mo Yuying regained consciousness, her once empty and soulless eyes now had color and light. Half blurry, half misty, Yi Qing Luo indicated that in that state, when Mo Yuying looked at her, like a delicate doll, it made her young lady's heart melted. But under the situation where she didn't know what kind of injury Mo Yuying had suffered, The Mo Ying who regained her senses, as though she had a soul. She didn't know if it was good or bad. Yi Qing Luo could only decide to let the brothers in Devil Class protect Shadow back to West Continent, and let Master Ghost Doctor take a look at her condition, and also to inform West Continent about what happened in South Continent. To be prepared to deal with Secluded Palace. If it was possible, she could also bring some helpers from West Continent and rush over to East Continent. At this moment, Yi Qing Luo threw Mo Xian at the door and walked into Mo Ying's room. Mo Ying was in a conscious state. On seeing Yi Qing Luo, her pair of lively and adorable eyes sparkled, as though it was decorated with dazzling starlight. Qing Luo. That soft little voice called out her name gently. Yi Qing Luo walked up quickly and sat by the bedside. Do you still feel pain from your wound? Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere? Mo Ying closed her beautiful eyes. That extremely pale, bloodless face revealed a pitiful smile. Her voice was very soft as she opened her mouth. No pain, I'm much better now. But Yi Qing Luo could tell from Mo Ying's expression. Mo Ying wasn't as much better as what she said. Yi Qing Luo sighed as she helped her to tuck the blanket. You look so adorable, so you should have the self-awareness of a little lowly. If you need to act coquettishly, then do so. There's no need to force yourself. I'm older than you. Mo Ying fixed her eyes on her, emphasizing every single word. Just this little face of yours, you'd better obediently be a little lowly and let me protect you. Yi Qing Luo's slender fingers gently pinched her pale face. Her strength was extremely light, as though it was lightly brushing past her face. Mo Ying's thick and curly eyelashes, which were like those of a doll, trembled. A trace of complicated and indescribable colors also flashed through her starry eyes. Yi Qing Luo seemed to have seen the change in Mo Ying's eyes. It was as if he did not see it. She only bent down, her movements gentle and slow, lightly covering Mo Ying's body, half hugging Mo Ying's shoulders. Yi Qing Luo controlled her strength very well. It didn't make Mo Ying feel any weight. However, she was able to let Mo Ying clearly feel her warmth. Yi Qing Luo gently hugged Mo Ying as her voice was gentle. Shadow, no matter what kind of life you had in the past, and no matter what your identity is, I have decided that you are my sister. In this life, you will always be my sister. No matter what you do, don't try to be brave by yourself. Remember, I'm behind you. Even she and Mo Xian were unable to find out the cause of Mo Ying's serious injury. As for Mo Ying, it was obvious that she didn't want to talk about this matter any further. Everyone had their own secrets that they were unwilling to expose to others. Just like how she, Yi Qing Luo, wasn't someone from this world. It was as if there was another face concealed beneath Qiao Jin's seemingly ordinary face. Just like how Qiao Jin was a son from an aristocratic family in the upper three realms, but he hid his identity and stayed in Nirvana realm. Wait a minute. Mo Ying wasn't willing to say. Chapter 3246. Qing Luo. Mo Ying's nose was filled with the fragrance of the young girl. That gentleness made her heart feel as if it was covered by some kind of warmth. It made her feel at ease. Mo Ying closed her beautiful eyes as she absorbed the warmth from Yi Qing Luo. Her pale lips slowly rose into a slight arc. I'm fine. Next time we meet, I'll still be me. A soft voice floated into his ears. Yi Qing Luo smiled lightly as her eyes curved. Why don't we make a bet? What? Mo Ying opened her eyes and her beautiful eyes brightened. Let's bet. Will I return to the West Continent to look for you first, or will you come to the East Continent to help me? Yi Qing Luo beamed as she revealed the terms of the bet. Mo Ying was slightly startled and immediately smiled. Okay, I'll bet. Yi Qing Luo touched the hair on her forehead. After the matters in East Continent are settled, I'll accompany you back to Godless Island. Mo Ying's smile froze. Her curly eyelashes drooped slightly. So Yi Qing Luo knew. Yi Qing Luo had always known. That dagger came from Godless Island. She was the island sage of Godless Island. The Lord Island Sage who was above the island master. He had always been a highly respected existence. But ever since she left Godless Island. However, The current island master of Godless Island had repeatedly tried to get rid of her, the island saint. He was even willing to cooperate with the Palace of Gloomy Darkness. To be honest, she was the island sage of Godless Island. Many times, Godless Island had interfered in Gloomy Palace's schemes. This made her feel very uncomfortable. He also felt guilty towards Yi Qing Luo and the others. But she did not know how to express it. Time and time again, he treated them twice as well. Qing Luo. Mo Yuing opened her mouth, her voice was very soft. As for Godless Island, Dizun has already dealt with it, so there's no need to trouble yourself. Xian had already dealt with it? How could she not know? Last time, after the matter of Dao Yigan pretending to be Shishanglan ended, His Majesty went to Godless Island. Mo Yuing explained. It doesn't matter. As for Godless Island, I will eventually return and take back everything that belongs to me. The soft little lowly voice said these incomparably firm words. However, it did not seem out of place at all. That sonorous and forceful tone made people believe that she could definitely do it. Yi Qing Luo caressed her head. As you wish. This doting tone, this gentle little action. Mo Yuing couldn't help but had an urge to pounce towards Yi Qing Luo as she cried out, "Marry me! Marry me!" However, Mo Yuing raised her spirits, and after chatting with Yi Qing Luo for such a long time, her consciousness couldn't hold on any longer. Not long after, she was immersed in this peaceful feeling. He fell into a coma. Yi Qing Luo sat by her bedside for a moment and scrutinized Mo Ying's expression before she got up to leave. Just as he closed the door to Mo Ying's room, Yi Qing Luo's slender waist was locked tightly by a strong and powerful arm. Xian. Yi Qing Luo struggled a little from the sudden hug and raised her head to look at him. He raised his head. The man's lips fell down fiercely. He used a lot of strength, which made Yi Qing Luo couldn't help but moan. Her fingers clutched tightly onto Mo Xian's lapel as her delicate body leaned against the man's broad chest. Ah, Xian. What's wrong? She could sense that Mo Xian's mood was very unhappy. It's been too long. Mo Xian frowned as he held her chin. Although the shadow is a lady, but it's too close. Yi Qing Luo. Chapter 3247. Yi Qing Luo stretched out her hand and pinched his face. Big vinegar jar, carry me back to the room. Mo Xian forced a smile from the young lady's fingers, but his face was still sullen. However, his actions were very sincere. Directly hugging Yi Qing Luo's waist into his arms, he turned around and headed towards their room. Yi Qing Luo's hands circled around his neck as her little head nestled into his chest. Shadow said, "You've already been to Godless Island and stirred up a wave of trouble there, right?" The man floated down from the top of her head. Yi Qing Luo raised her little head and stared at his clean chin. Stirring up trouble without bringing me along. Mo Xian's eyes drooped. In his eyes, the girl's beautiful face was reflected. The young lady's face was pretentiously sullen, but there was an unconcealable smile between her brows. That coquettish and overbearing look. A pair of long and narrow eyes stared straight at him. This made Mo Xiantong's eyes turn darker by a few degrees. Little Luo. Or wants to stir up trouble? Mo Xian suddenly opened his mouth. His deep and husky voice was full of magnetism under the tranquility. Yi Qing Luo's heart was on stir up trouble, as her eyes lit up. Of course, how can I miss out on stirring up trouble? While they were talking, the two of them had already strode into the room. But Mo Xian didn't let her go just like that. Instead he stood at the door, his shimmering peach blossom eyes stared at her. So now we're going to stir up trouble, do you want to go? Yi Qing Luo's arms hooked around Mo Xian's neck tighter. Go go go. Mo Xian's smile deepened. Under the candlelight in the room, that smile seemed to be plated with a layer of brilliance. It made his peerless face look like a god, noble and elegant. The handsome man trick made Yi Qing Luo totally not notice that under Mo Xian's smile, there was a hidden emotion. Hence, Yi Qing Luo was led by Mo Xian, and the two of them quietly left the room, and sat on the carriage which was dragged by little Nine. The young lady nestled in the man's arms excitedly grabbed Mo Xian's collar, and asked with a smile. Ah Xian, Where are we going to stir up trouble now? How big of a mess? Isn't it exciting? It's a secret. Dmo Xian whispered into her ear. It will be so exciting that you won't be able to put it down. Yiqing Luo. Why do I feel like there's another meaning in his words? He had a strange feeling. Was it an illusion? By the time Yiqing Luo reached the destination mentioned by Dmo Xian, she finally understood. It really wasn't an illusion. This place, it was the Imperial Palace. It was specially built by Dmo Xian for her, similar to a 21st century room. Causing trouble? Causing trouble in her room in the Imperial Palace? Yiqing Luo hadn't reacted in time. At this point, if she still didn't understand, then her reaction would be slow. She looked at the man in front of her who had a devilish smile on his face. Yiqing Luo discreetly moved towards the direction of the window. He took a step forward. The man's long arms had already clasped her slender waist. The girl's delicate body fell into the man's broad embrace. That scorching heat also scorched Yiqing Luo's body. Didn't you say that as long as the time and place is fine, I can do whatever I want? The man's deep and hoarse voice rang above her head. Now the time and place is just right. Lil Luo, or you can't escape. Chapter 3248. Dmo Xian accurately caught hold of her little fist that was about to strike him. His elegant brows were stained with a smile that made one sink into it. Lie? What did I lie to you about? You said to bring me to stir up trouble. You cheated me back to the Imperial Palace. Yiqing Luo struggled and cried out. She struggled. The man's other arm had already wrapped around her. Overbearing aura, strong force. It almost locked the young lady's petite body tightly in his arms. No matter how she struggled, she couldn't break free. The closer they got, Yiqing Luo could clearly feel the heat from the man's body which kept rising. I didn't lie to you, I am stirring up trouble with you. Dmo Xian's voice was hoarse, so clear that it made one unable to resist. You lying paper beast. Woo woo. Before she could finish her words, she was forcefully sealed by the man. Yiqing Luo originally had no immunity towards Dmo Xian, coupled with the man's deliberate release of seductive aura. Just a moment later, Yiqing Luo had already thrown away her armor, stirring up trouble, opening the curtains. The next day, when Yiqing Luo opened her eyes, she had already returned to the inn in the South Continent. Yiqing Luo had just moved. Her entire body was sore, making her face flush red. She recalled last night angrily and annoyed. She gritted her teeth and couldn't help but spit out 2 words. Beast. Obviously knowing that they were heading to the East Continent today, this beast still dragged her along to stir up trouble. He even used his honey trap. There was no room for her to resist at all. Yiqing Luo groaned as she climbed up from the bed, grabbing the clothes by the side. Her arm was sore. Even the movement of lifting her hand was a little strenuous. Her fingers were just about to touch the red robe hanging by the side. Following that, she felt a light breeze brushing past. That red robe had already brushed past her fingertips, landing on a slender finger. That jade-like finger, the joints were distinct. When she saw that person, Yiqing Luo turned her little head, as a cold breath came out from her nose. The bed beside him sunk a little. The elegant sandalwood fragrance instantly enveloped Yiqing Luo entirely. The man's magnetic voice, full of laughter, came from beside her ear. I'll help you. I don't need your help. Yiqing Luo turned her head away, unwilling to look at her. The man scooped with his long arm. Her delicate body was in the man's arms. She was too lazy to struggle. Most importantly, her entire body was sore, and she couldn't struggle at all. The man helped her put on her clothes slowly and gently. Then he gently and considerately tucked her hair into a simple and elegant style. His movements were very skillful, as if he had done this kind of thing often. Through the bronze mirror, although Yiqing Luo's face was stiff, however, her gaze was fixed on his slender fingers. Yiqing Luo was astonished by Dmo Xian's proficient hair binding skills. Everyone knew. The mysterious and noble overlord. Even his own hair was done by the protectors or secret guards. How was it possible for him to pull up a woman's hair? So Dmo Xian wanted to tie up her hair. How long had he been practicing in secret? He was really a man who was so silly that he was cute. Yi Qingluo's heart was filled with rage. And because of Dmo Xian's fawning actions, it completely disappeared. Just as Yi Qingluo pursed her lips and was about to open her mouth to forgive Dmo Xian, then she felt her hair tighten. Something was stuck in her hair. Under the bronze mirror. That simple and elegant hair. The hairpin shone brilliantly. Just one look and Yi Qingluo fell in love with this hairpin. Star. Chapter 3249. The silvery hair was like drops of water, flowing between the hairpin. At the end of the hairpin was a cherry blossom carved from transparent crystal, sparkling with brilliance. If one didn't look closely, one would feel that the cherry blossom was like a butterfly fluttering its wings. It was dazzling to the extreme. Yi Qingluo's pair of charming eyes were dazzled by the dazzling light of this hairpin. This is... Yi Qingluo slowly raised her hand. The red robe slid down to the elbow, revealing the fair jade-like roots. Her glossy fingers, which were coated with fluorescent light, gently touched the hairpin in her hair. Her fingers trembled lightly, touched it lightly. Dmo Xian's big palm held her little hand. It led her trembling fingertips to touch the hanging cherry blossoms. The touch was slightly cool, but with a man's warmth. A gift. The man whispered in her ear. Do you like it? Yi Qingluo looked at the man's eyes through the bronze mirror. This is personally made by you. She could feel it. This hairpin had the man's presence and strength. Dmo Xian didn't say a word, but his arms tightened around her delicate body. His voice was gentle. Are you still angry? Yi Qingluo's eyelashes fluttered. Her long and narrow eyes were stained with tears. He waited on her as she dressed. From him personally helping her to tie up her hair. From his extremely gentle, slightly fawning attitude. The fire in her heart had also dissipated completely. Not to mention at this time. After seeing the hairpin personally made by Dmo Xian, all that was left in her heart was full of gratitude. Actually, she wasn't angry. She grew up in the 21st century. The education and thinking she received was different from Nirvana realm. She wasn't very resistant to Dmo Xian's action of bringing her to create trouble. After all, Dmo Xian was a normal man, kissing and hugging her every day. If she didn't have the idea of creating trouble, she would have doubted her own charm. But very unhappy. The one who created trouble and exhausted energy was obviously Dmo Xian. But the one who fainted, lying on the bed, was her. But at this time, all the discomfort and exhaustion had vanished into thin air. Her heart was almost turned into a mess by Dmo Xian. Next time, I will be more careful and not let you be so tired. Dmo Xian saw that she didn't speak for a long time, and his thin lips moved closer to her exposed skin. Or the next time, the right to stir up trouble will be handed over to you. Yi Qingluo. I was touched for nothing. This beast was already thinking of next time. Yi Qingluo's smile froze as her face sunk. Just as he was about to speak, the man's deep voice sounded again. Everyone is already waiting for us at the city gate. If we don't go out now, I'm afraid we'll have to wait until afternoon before we can set off. Yi Qingluo. Yi Qingluo was expressing that this shameless beast could forget about deceiving her in the future. Yi Qingluo and Dmo Xian walked together to the city gates. He accepted the gazes of the crowd. On the other hand, the soldiers and the disciples of the imperial palace stood straight and didn't look sideways. But Devil Class's group of bad friends all had wretched looks in their eyes, with a teasing smile hanging on their lips, using an extremely wretched look to wander between Yi Qingluo and Dmo Xian. Yan Xiaoyi directly laughed out Jajage. Chapter 3250. Yi Qingluo's cold eyes swept past as she stared at Yan Xiaoyi. Yan Xiaoyi giggled as she shrank into Qiaojin's embrace. TSK, our boss has flown into a rage out of humiliation. This means, we guessed correctly. Qiaojin held the young girl in his arms tightly and said warmly, Alright, stop messing around. Yan Xiaoyi pouted her lips but didn't continue teasing Yi Qingluo. However, the mocking smile on his face did not fade away for a long time. Because Yi Qingluo had indeed stirred up trouble with DMO Xian last night, she felt guilty and didn't continue this topic with Yan Xiaoyi. Today's departure was also a farewell. Devil-class brothers, as well as DMO Xian, arranged for 30 Imperial Palace elite disciples to protect them in secret, as they returned to the West Continent first, to escort Mo Yuing back, and at the same time inform the West Continent about the matters regarding the South Continent and East Continent. As for Yi Qingluo and the rest, they followed the East Wave Monarch towards the East Wave Continent. After saying their goodbyes, the two groups of people headed in opposite directions and embarked on their journey. Gu Ming personally sent them off until both parties disappeared from his sight. Only then did he and the great general head towards the palace. He had just returned to the entrance of the palace. A guard dressed in the uniform of the Wind Valley sect hurried over. Sect leader Lord. Something has happened, something has happened. Gu Ming stopped and frowned at the guard. What's wrong? Lord sect leader. The guard's face was filled with terror as he hesitated and stammered. Young sect leader, he's gone. The South Wave Continent and the East Wave Continent weren't that far apart. Moreover, there was a small path that led straight to it. It could be seen that the relationship between the East and South continents was much closer than the other continents. Within a day, Yi Qingluo's group had already moved into the East Continent's Imperial Palace. Before East Wave Monarch personally went to South Wave Continent to plead with Yi Qingluo, he had already given the order in the palace. The palace maids were extremely respectful towards Yi Qingluo's group. After a day of rest, Yi Qingluo and DMO Xian planned to head towards the place which East Wave Monarch mentioned earlier. That suddenly appeared and released a strange mysterious energy from the desolate mountain. In other words, the East Wave Sovereign's guess was that the forces of Netherworld Palace had secretly invaded this place. That place was likely to be the secret base that Dark Nether Palace was preparing to set up in the East Continent. Yi Qingluo recalled the corpses she saw in the base in South Tide Continent, and the struggling souls in the refining vessels. Her eyes were filled with a layer of coldness. If he could stop it in time, if they were the first to destroy Abyss Palace's base in the East Wave Continent, he could only destroy it. The gloomy palace used corpses and human souls to refine undead puppets. But there were always accidents in everything. After all, Yi Qingluo and the others were esteemed guests who were personally welcomed into the East Tide Continent by the East Tide Monarch. In addition, after East Water Continent's Jade Sky Sect's sovereign heard that Yi Qingluo and the others had arrived at East Water Continent, he slandered them in various ways. This caused numerous powerhouses and commoners in East Continent to be extremely curious towards Yi Qingluo and the rest. They also wanted to know, after all, the royal family's respect towards Yi Qingluo and the rest was real. Or was it Jade Dome Sect's sect master's hatred and vilification towards Yi Qingluo and the others real? Because of this, Yi Qingluo and DMO Xian wanted to settle their business properly. Behind them, there was a large group of people. Those who heard the news and came to join in the fun. Most of the powerhouses were people. Chapter 3251. Hence, Yi Qingluo and DMO Xian were followed by a large group of people. Adding them up, there were at least 50 to 60 people. These people from various powerhouses in East Continent, although they were following behind them, but they didn't go up to disturb them. After all, they were people whom East Continent Monarch had personally welcomed back. Although the various powerhouses didn't understand East Continent Monarch's actions, but they had more or less heard of this rumor. South Continent's matters, almost everyone in the entire Nirvana realm knew about it. And the people whom East Continent Monarch had invited back. It was rumored that they were the benefactors who helped South Continent defend South Continent. Could it be? East Continent Monarch felt that their East Continent would become the next South Continent? So as a precaution, he specially invited these people over? But when the various powerhouses saw Yi Qingluo and DMO Xian, their faces revealed a suspicious expression. This time they were going to investigate that barren mountain. Yi Qingluo originally didn't intend to go over with a large group of people to alert the enemy. Hence only Yi Qingluo and Dmo Xian headed over. In the eyes of the various powerhouses, the young lady was dressed in a cherry red long dress, a stunning beauty. Beautiful, indeed beautiful. Like a fairy from the 9 heavens who had descended to earth. As compared to Princess Lanling Nua, who was once famous in the East Continent, she was even more beautiful. No. There was no comparison at all. But this beauty. Could it kill Secluded Palace? Could it save the East Continent? And this young lady looked too young. How could she possibly be an expert who helped South Continent defend the continent? Then, the purple-robed man beside the young lady was tall, and his every movement was noble and elegant. Even though he was wearing a half-mask, concealing half of his looks. From this, one could tell just how peerless his appearance was under the mask. But this handsome. Could he kill Secluded Palace? Could he save the East Continent? The various powerhouses' hearts were filled with doubts. Logically, based on South Continent's situation, plus Yi Qingluo and Dmo Xian's reputation, no matter what, East Continent's people should know their identities. But precisely because South Continent's situation was so severe that it was almost exterminated. Moreover, their opponent was the newly risen Palace of Gloomy Darkness, whose momentum was heading straight for the Imperial Palace. Moreover, the Secluded Darkness Palace had a secret weapon that was impervious to swords, spears, water, and fire. Even if the other continents heard about this, they did not dare to interfere. He was afraid that he would get into trouble. Because of this, no matter how close the East Wave Sovereign was to the Wind Valley sect master of the South Wave continent. Before discovering the abnormality of the Barren Mountain, the East Wave monarch had no choice but to send out his own secret guards to assist Qin Lai in secret. He could only choose to protect himself. After all, in addition to being a good friend of Gu Ming, more importantly, he was the monarch of the East Wave continent. So until now, these people only knew of the tragic state of the South Wave continent, and some news from the East Wave sovereign himself. However, he did not know much about the specifics of the situation, and the reason why the South Wave continent was able to survive in the end. Just when everyone was full of doubts, a deep voice came from the crowd. Are you the benefactors that Lord Monarch asked to come back? This person asked the question that was on everyone's mind. Many pairs of eyes turned towards the source of the voice. A tall and sturdy man in his 30s strode over. Chapter 3252. Yi Qingluo also stopped in her tracks as she shifted her gaze towards that man. From the attitude of the group of people from various powerhouses who had been following behind her, this 30-year-old man's status in Jade Dome City shouldn't be low. But from this person's imposing manner, one could judge that this person was coming with ill intentions. The man beside her leaned forward slightly. Using his shoulder, he blocked in front of the young lady. This subconscious action made Yi Qingluo's lips blossomed into a smile. Knowing that this person's ability wasn't her match, but he still made a move to protect her. This meant that this man, no matter if it was his subconscious or his muscles' instincts, they were all thinking of protecting her. Yi Qingluo's eyes curved into crescents as she hugged Dmo Xian's arm with both hands. And Yi Qingluo's brilliant smile, and that action of hugging Dmo Xian's arm. In the eyes of this person, who was around 30 years old, that meant that she totally didn't put him in her eyes. That was intentional provocation. The man's originally solemn and dignified expression instantly darkened. In broad daylight. As a lady, how dare you offend public decency? In Nirvana realm, although there wasn't that kind of old thinking, that a lady must obey the 3 virtues and must not step out of the house. But towards a lady, it was still harsh. No matter how high a lady's profound grade was, she still had to marry after all. Ultimately, she still had to bring along her entire life's worth of ability to contribute to her husband's family. Like hugging and kissing a man on the streets, this kind of action. Generally speaking, a lady absolutely could not do it. But to Yi Qingluo, this was merely an ordinary matter. Hearing the man's malicious tone of questioning, Yiqing Luo couldn't help but laugh. A pair of long and narrow eyes, curved upwards, extremely bewitching. In her eyes, it was as if poppy flowers were blooming, so beautiful that it could captivate one's soul, making one suffocate. Even the man who came looking for trouble couldn't help but be mesmerized by this smile. This, old uncle, may I know who are you to me? Yiqing Luo smiled lightly as she spoke word by word, although there was a hint of laughter in her voice. However, his tone was so cold that it could cut through the bones. The blinded man immediately shivered. His back felt cold from those cold words. My husband and I can do whatever we want. What does that have to do with you? What rights do you have to judge me? Yiqing Luo was still smiling as her charming eyes curved slightly, gazing at the man. In the air, there was a formless pressure. The man's face was no longer ashen, but instead it turned pale. It was as if he was unwilling to admit that he would be frightened by the aura of a little girl. His bell-like eyes stared fiercely at Yiqing Luo, his eyes filled with warning murderous intent. This general is East Continent's country protector General Chao Qian. Protector of the state? General? This person was actually a general? In Yiqing Luo's mind, the great general whom she had met in the southern continent surfaced. They were both tall and sturdy men in armor. But why was his temperament completely different? The great general was full of righteousness. On the other hand, the person in front of him was fiendish and vicious. Clearly his hands were stained with blood. Towards this country protector general, Yiqing Luo didn't have any good impression at all. Country protector general? Yiqing Luo scoffed as her charming eyes swept past Chao Qian. So what about that? That light sweep. As compared to ridicule, it was more like humiliation. Chapter 3253. Young lass, didn't your family teach you that when you're outside, a dragon should coil up and a tiger should lie down? Chao Qian's eyes were filled with rage as he released his own aura. He attempted to use his aura to suppress Yiqing Luo. Facing Chao Qian's oppressive might, Yiqing Luo responded with a smile as the smile on her face remained unchanged. My family indeed didn't teach me this logic. Chao Qian's expression changed slightly as his pupils contracted as he stared at Yiqing Luo, who was totally unaffected as his brows creased tightly. If your family didn't teach you this, then this general shall teach you. Yiqing Luo's slender brows rose slightly as she looked at him with a smile which didn't look like a smile. There's no need to trouble, General. Although my family didn't teach me this logic, but they taught me that if there's a silly beep asking for a slap, as a kind and adorable young lass, I have to satisfy the silly beep's wish. Yiqing Luo's words were simple and vulgar. Even though Yiqing Luo hadn't made a move to slap him, Chao Qian felt that his face was burning in pain. In front of a young lass. He was the dignified country protecting general of East Tide Continent, but he wasn't able to gain any advantage at all. He was even ridiculed by a young lass, as though he was a retarded beep. In front of the various powerhouses, in front of the surrounding commoners, he had lost all his face. In Chao Qian's mind, he recalled what his son said. The idea that Yiqing Luo was a demoness became even more resolute. Country protecting general. Suddenly, a young lady's clear voice interrupted the tumbling in Chao Qian's heart. Chao Qian raised his head in alarm as he stared at Yiqing Luo. The young lady smiled lightly as her voice was clear and melodious. Since country protecting general is very clear that we are the benefactors who saved your East Tide Continent personally invited back by the East Tide monarch. But it's just the first time you've met us and you're reprimanding, humiliating and pressuring us. Don't tell me, country protecting general is questioning the East Tide monarch's decision? The young lady's voice paused for a moment, but she didn't give Chao Qian a chance to speak as she continued laughing. Or should I say, East Tide monarch's decision, country protecting general totally disregards it? The meaning behind her words. It was obvious that he was asking the protector general, are you looking down on the East Wave sovereign? Chao Qian's expression changed drastically as he hurriedly retorted. You, what nonsense are you spouting? My loyalty to the Lord Monarch can be proven by the sun and the moon. At such a young age, you already know how to sow discord. You really have a good upbringing. While Chao Qian was rebutting, he also stepped on Yi Qingluo's foot. His voice was also extremely loud. He was afraid that the people around him would misunderstand that he was the protector of the state, and did not respect the East Wave sovereign. It was also indirectly telling everyone that Yi Qingluo, this demoness, was intentionally sowing discord. Yi Qingluo put on an innocent face and blinked her big bright eyes. I'm such a kind and cute little girl, I don't even know the principle of going out. How would I know how to sow discord? I'm just telling you how I feel. Saying that, Yi Qingluo blinked her eyes innocently and suddenly realized something as she pointed at Chao Qian. I know you're called guilty conscience. Perhaps it was because Yi Qingluo's acting skills were simply too explosive. After Yi Qingluo's words ended, the gazes of the surrounding powerhouses towards Chao Qian were all different. Even the surrounding commoners started to stare at Chao Qian, as they started whispering amongst themselves. As the saying goes, the onlooker sees things more clearly. Chapter 3254. Looking at the Imperial Protector General again, his head was filled with sweat and his face was agitated. That was obviously a guilty conscience. TSK, this Imperial Protector General indeed didn't have any respect towards the East Wave monarch. The commoners were silently cursing. And so no matter which era, any place, it was a society that looked at one's looks. When Chao Qian heard Yi Qingluo using the words he had said previously to counter him, he was so infuriated that he almost threw up blood. He was originally a boorish man, and adhered to the principle of not babbling if he could make a move. Now that he was choked by Yi Qingluo's few words, he couldn't even retort a single word. He was so infuriated that the muscles on his entire body tensed up as he clenched his fist tightly, wanting to hammer down on that young lady's peerless face. But he was very clear. If this fist of his really landed on her, he had indeed confirmed the two words guilty conscience, which Yi Qingluo mentioned. Because of his guilty conscience, he flew into a rage out of humiliation and beat someone up. And the person he beat up was an esteemed guest that the monarch had personally invited back. Even if he was the Imperial Protector General, he probably wouldn't be able to escape punishment. Chao Qian suppressed his anger as his brows creased inwards as he stated his intention in a cold voice. Young lass, you have a sharp tongue. I wonder if your ability is as powerful as your ability. He opened his hand and a huge black axe appeared in his hand. That huge axe was almost taller than Chao Qian's entire head. One must know that Chao Qian had a strong physique and from a visual estimation, he was at least 2 meters tall or so. It was imaginable just how tall and heavy that huge axe was. That huge axe, in Chao Qian's muscular hands, agilely brandished it a few times. Following that, Chao Qian suddenly pointed the axe head towards Yi Qingluo. Young lass, since you're personally invited by the monarch to protect the East Wave continent, to prevent the South Wave continent's tragedy from happening, the benefactor, in the East Wave continent, then let this general, the Imperial Protector General, personally test if you have the ability to protect the East Wave continent, so that the East Wave continent's commoners will believe in you. Facing that flickering sharp axe head, Yi Qingluo's eyelids didn't even blink. Even though the axe was only 3 steps away from her, and would have landed on her body and split her in half, Lin Mingya did not dare to move. Yi Qingluo's expression didn't change as her long and narrow eyes looked at him smilingly. Then the young girl slowly opened her mouth and said in a clear voice, "The East Wave Sovereign personally invited us over, but the Protector General still can't accept the East Wave Sovereign's choice. So the East Wave Sovereign's status in the East Wave continent is lower than that of a Protector General. Damned girl. How dare you try to sow discord?" Chao Qian scolded angrily, his eyes wide open. "I was worried that Lord Monarch would be deceived by a silly little girl like you, so I came here to test your strength on behalf of Lord Monarch." The protector of the country was overbearing. The girl's expression was light and indifferent. It formed a sharp contrast. None of the people from the major forces, or the commoners spoke up to break the silence. They were not fools. Speak up and help the protector of the state? Wouldn't that confirm what the little girl said? That she was questioning their respected Lord Monarch? Open his mouth and help that little girl? Wouldn't that be offending the Protector General? Besides, they were also very curious about the young lady's strength. Hence, everyone maintained their silence in tacit understanding. But in his heart, there was an urgent hope. Fight! 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 Chapter 3255. Why? You don't dare? Chao Qian placed the huge axe heavily by his side. The huge axe crashed onto the ground with a loud dong sound. The crowd only felt that. Their feet seemed to have trembled thrice. The commoners were so shocked that they cried out in shock as they started to retreat. Chao Qian was apparently very satisfied with the commoners' reaction. He straightened his back as that valiant and dignified facial features displayed a solemn expression. Little lass, don't think that I am bullying you just because I am older than you. I am doing this for the sake of East Tide Continent's future. But don't worry, I am not someone who doesn't know the severity of things. I just want to see your ability, to see what standard it is. I will show mercy. When he said the last part of his sentence, Chao Qian used that kind of high and mighty, disdainful attitude when he opened his mouth. Finishing his words, Chao Qian held his head high and puffed out his chest, waiting for the young lady to apologize or beg for mercy. But he waited and waited. Chao Qian only waited for a pft, filled with sarcastic laughter. That laughter was obviously very pleasant to hear. But in Chao Qian's ears, that was like a sharp knife, fiercely piercing his face. Yiqing Luo's lips curled into a cold smile as she crossed her arms, staring at Chao Qian. Her waist suddenly tightened. Yiqing Luo's eyes flickered slightly as she looked sideways at the man beside her. She heard Dmo Xian's deep and hoarse voice, drifting into her ears. Noisy, I'll go settle it. Dmo Xian said as his sleeves moved slightly, towards a brainless cannon fodder like Chao Qian. Dmo Xian only needed to wave his sleeves slightly, and he would be able to dismember Chao Qian into 1,000 pieces, leaving nothing behind. Ah Xian. A hand covered Dmo Xian's arm, suppressing his overflowing profound energy. Since we are here to help East Tide Monarch, if this matter blows up, it will be very troublesome. Fighting with the country's general. No matter what the consequences were, they would eventually be estranged by the East Tide Continent's commoners, or other powerhouses. This would also give the secluded palace an opportunity. Unless there was a need. Yiqing Luo really didn't want to waste time and energy to tangle with this brainless general. Let's go. Yiqing Luo held onto Dmo Xian's arm as they walked past Chao Qian. The axe-wielding Chao Qian was left to the side. Chao Qian stood rooted to the spot, stunned for a long while before he abruptly reacted. Little girl, are you afraid? Feeling guilty? Chao Qian stared at Yiqing Luo's back as his eyes flashed past a glint of as expected. The embarrassment of being ignored was replaced by delight. Chao Qian hefted his giant axe and strode forward. Little girl, if you're afraid, apologize to me. Then follow me to Lord Monarch and tell him you lied to him. This general will be merciful and let you go. Otherwise, as he spoke, a proud smile appeared on his face. At the moment when Yiqing Luo didn't dare to fight with him, Chao Qian felt extremely carefree. His son was right. This little girl was a little demon who used her beauty to serve others. At this moment, the powerful lover was not here. She didn't even have the courage to exchange one move with him. Ridiculous. Just based on this little demon, was she worthy to be called as East Tide Continent's benefactor? Chao Qian's eyes flashed with a murderous intent. He laughed coldly as his loud and clear voice resounded in the skies above Jade Dome City. Otherwise, none of you can dream of leaving Jade Dome City. Chapter 3256. Close the city gates? Were they intending to seal off Jade Dome City, to stop them from leaving? When Yiqing Luo heard that, she squinted her eyes as a chilly intent faintly appeared in her long and narrow eyes. Chao Qian saw Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian stopping in their tracks. He thought that they were afraid. He laughed delightfully. Two little dolls now, Have you learnt what this general taught you? The logic of being outside. He swaggered forward. The surrounding powerhouses and commoners were extremely disdainful towards Chao Qian's actions. After all, these were merely two young lads and young lady. As the protector of the kingdom, Chao Qian was indeed too overbearing. But, although these two little dolls didn't look like they were afraid of the country protecting general, but they refused to bother about the country protecting general. This made everyone's hearts start to have suspicions. If these two kids were really swindlers who swindled and deceived people, then wouldn't they be lying to their monarch? If this matter were to be spread out, their East Tide continent would become a joke. Everyone's gaze towards Yiqing Luo and Dmo Xian was filled with a strange expression. Some even started to whisper to each other. Originally the commoners and various powerhouses who didn't want to interfere in this matter. Instinctively, they started to surround Yiqing Luo, although they didn't make a move. But they used their own bodies to block Yiqing Luo's path of leaving. Apparently, they were forcing Yiqing Luo to give an explanation. Yiqing Luo had not expected that she had just arrived in East Tide continent, and she had already caused such a huge ruckus. It directly broke the original plan that she and Dmo Xian had set. Yiqing Luo's gaze swept past those commoners calmly as the expression on her face still didn't have any changes. Her emotions were also calm without any fluctuations. Moments later, her gaze fell onto Chao Qian. After Chao Qian saw the surrounding commoners had started to take action, the pride of being the country protecting general, and finally being able to retaliate. Earlier from Yiqing Luo's words, he had suffered humiliation which made his face filled with a vicious cold smile. Before he could open his mouth, Yiqing Luo used that pair of calm eyes to look at him as she spoke out. The reason which the State Protector General taught me, pardon my ignorance, but I still haven't learnt it. The corners of her lips curled up slightly. As Chao Qian's expression darkened, she continued, however, someone as intelligent as the protector of the state will definitely learn my reasoning. As soon as he finished speaking, pa, the crisp sound of a slap was extremely loud. Everyone was stunned. Chao Qian was also stunned. But the girl who had slapped him gracefully retracted her hand. The masked man on the side took out an embroidered handkerchief, held the girl's hand, and wiped it off bit by bit. The young girl's face was as calm as still water, without the slightest ripple. Only that pair of long and narrow eyes were tinged with charm. It would be a waste not to take the head that was delivered to me. It would be a waste not to hit his face. Clear and melodious words spat out from the girl's pink lips one by one. After she finished this sentence, the young girl turned her head and exchanged glances with the man next to her. That aloof and noble aura, at this instance, was like the blooming of flowers in spring. No need to wipe, later on it will get dirty. Dmo Xian pinched her fair little hand. Don't think it's dirty? Punish the chicken to warn the monkey. Yiqing Luo spat out these 4 words, as her peripheral vision swept past the surrounding commoners. She didn't want to stir up trouble. She also didn't want to create estrangement with the East Continent's commoners at this juncture. But Chapter 3257. The surrounding people from various large powerhouses in East Tide continent had basically all arrived, and numerous Jade Dome sex commoners were also present. Since the people of the East Water continent all had doubts about her strength, it was only natural, then, she would use Chao Qian as a warning to others, so that these people would dispel their suspicions. As for the consequences, that would depend on how the East Tide monarch would handle it. Yiqing Luo, who had decided to kill the chicken as a warning to others, didn't intentionally suppress her anger. She shifted her gaze towards Chao Qian. Her eyes were filled with frost. I wonder if the intelligent country protecting general has learnt the logic that I've taught you. That slap was not only on Chao Qian's face, it was also a slap on his dignity. In front of so many people. He was the country protecting general, and he was slapped by a young lass who was still wet behind her ears. If this matter were to be spread out, it would definitely become a joke after a meal. Chao Qian's eyes suddenly turned scarlet red as he raised his huge axe and chopped it down towards Yiqing Luo's direction. Profound qi burst forth, stirring the surrounding air. A gust of strong wind also lifted the young lady's black hair on her shoulders. If it was previously, Chao Qian was here for his son, then now, Chao Qian was really infuriated by Yi Qingluo and wanted to kill her. Bam! The huge axe fell. Vast profound energy surged and rolled. Monstrous waves of qi spread out in all directions. The people from the major forces were all forced to take a few steps back by this powerful aura. As for the other commoners, those with weaker bodies clutched their chests as they spat out blood. After the various powerhouses avoided that powerful aura, they immediately looked towards the direction of the billowing air waves. The masked, noble, elegant, and unapproachable man stood outside the safe zone. That man had obviously been standing beside the young lady earlier, and now he actually escaped to the safe zone by himself. What a pity for that devastatingly beautiful young lady. She must have been split into two halves by the country protecting general. Everyone sighed regretfully. Just at this moment, they suddenly heard someone exclaiming, "That young lady! That young lady is actually fine. She received general's axe barehandedly." What? Everyone was startled by this person's scream. Everyone craned their necks to take a closer look. Qi waves rolled and surged violently. The strong wind around them danced wildly, gradually blowing away the surging airwaves. It revealed two people standing in the middle of the street. Chao Qian gripped the giant axe with both hands and maintained a posture of cleaving downwards. As for the girl, he merely lifted his right hand. Under the sunlight, his right hand seemed to be plated with a layer of golden brilliance. She spread her fingers and faced the sharp axe. All he had to do was move the axe forward a little. That sharp axe could definitely chop off the girl's right hand. But, however, the axe did not chop down for a long time. No. It wasn't that Chao Qian hadn't slashed down. Instead, some of the faction leaders clearly saw it. A wisp of profound light flashed in the young girl's palm. It was that profound light that had blocked Chao Qian's giant axe. This caused the cultivators from the various powers to widen their eyes. He used only one hand to block the weapon of the general of the protector of the state? This in the entire Eastwave continent. There were probably not many people who could do this. This young girl actually possessed such powerful strength. It wasn't just the surrounding people who were shocked. You're tuning in to the Li Mei Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.